Boys, welcome in. We are live. Welcome to all the viewers watching along at home. We don't do this very often, but we're doing a bit of a thank you live stream to everyone who supported us over the course of the offseason, over the course of the season, getting into the offseason now, kind of wrapping up the season that was, looking ahead to the upcoming season. Who knows? Maybe we hit 10K today during the stream. We're only about 20 subscribers away. So share with a friend, subscribe if you haven't already. That would be dope to say the least, while I choke up here. I want to kick it around the table, see how everyone's doing while everybody gets in. Make sure you're dropping questions, leaving a like on the video, and as I said, subscribing if you're new. Nate, how are we doing today? The only one who hasn't managed to get sick out of the group of us to start
so
the
far
year.
So good. Like I was saying before the podcast, I could probably use a sick day or two. Like I'm not trying to get sick, but if it happens, it happens. I'm not going to fight it. But so far healthy and enjoying the holidays, and I'm just so excited for the playoffs coming up. So excited to get into the NFL draft season. It's my favorite season of the year. We've been starting on scouting, and nothing gets me as excited about scouting. So.
Yes, scouting is a fun time of the year, and so is the offseason in general, and it's a good time to get your team in line. Speaking about getting in line, Zach, you are toughing it out today. You were sick yesterday or not feeling well yesterday, but you are doing well. How are you today? What's up?
Well, yeah, I mean, I got a baby on the way, so I got my COVID and my flu shot both in one fell swoop, and it's not even that I was sick. It's just like I was so fatigued, and I woke up all last night like freezing cold. It was so weird. I'm good. Like I could push through. We were supposed to record, and luckily you let me push that off. But I'm happy to be here, man. I love these live streams. You know that. So
yep, I know you do. You are a big proprietor of live streams here, and hopefully maybe we'll be doing more over the course of the offseason. Your support during live streams is a huge vote to us doing more. So hey, if you like live streams, let us know in the comments. Let us know on other videos. Hey, do more live streams, Bob. Stop, dragging things along and let these guys do more live streams, whatever the case is. But with all of that said, all of the thank yous and whatnot in the books. Appreciate everybody chiming in. Good old Donnie. I know that's your buddy, Zach. Big love from Bearded Shotgun. Gator chiming in, of course. It's not a live stream without Gator chiming in. Got Roy saying, hey, and now I need to click that to go away. And, of course, our producer, Sean, chiming in saying, morning. And our buddy Coco Thunder, Johnny, chiming in as well. But with that said, boys, are we ready to rock and roll, get into some questions to kick this thing off?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. And just in case anybody's wondering, Mike is down with the sickness currently, or kind of on the mend. So that's why he's not here, unfortunately. But we got Zach instead. Zach got off of work for this. So, what a trooper, toughing it out through the aches and the pains of whatever he's got going on. But with that said, let's kick it off. What is Travis Etienne's value in one quarterback as we're heading into the offseason? Are we trying to sell high on the running back to finish? I think that's a big question. Are we willing to sell high right now on Travis Etienne? Nate, I'll kick it to you first. What are your thoughts here? Travis Etienne, what's the value kicking around at? What do you think? And is it worth selling right now? What do you think?
So first of all, I don't think it's worth selling right now. So there's this kind of process that happens as we get into the offseason. And players like Travis Etienne, who you know that their value does not match where their production led them. So he's RB2, but on Keep Trade Cut right now, he's not even a top 5. No, he's behind Kyron Williams, behind Devon Achane, behind Jonathan Taylor. He's RB8 right now. Now he's got that RB2 production, but people haven't realized it yet. A month or two from now, when we're all looking back at, hey, how did everyone finish for the 2023 season? People are going to realize, hey, Travis Etienne, we had the ups and downs throughout the season, but he was RB2 at the end of the day, and that's going to raise his value. But going to have to be before the rookie draft, because I don't think there's any top running backs coming in, but once those other running backs come in, that it just muddies everything up. So I think if you're going to sell Travis Etienne, the best time probably sometime in February, beginning of March. When people are starting to look back at the season, see that, hey, this guy was a top running back, one of the top running backs in the league for fantasy football, that's the time you want to move on. Players like Puka Nacua as well, as highly as he's already valued, he had the best rookie season of any wide receiver ever in NFL history. And you only give it some time, and he's going to continue to go up dynasty boards, dynasty rankings without playing any games. He's going to keep going up because we're going to look back and we're going to see the production that's so historic. Everyone's going to be talking about So those players that are kind of undervalued right now, if you're trying to sell them, I'd wait because that value is going to catch up to the production in about a month or two.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I just think selling players right now, in general, you're not getting great value. It's a picks market right now, so your picks are more valuable than players, at least in the mindset of Dynasty, as we always talk about. What's next is always the most valuable. Zach, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Travis Etienne. Are you looking to sell high? I know you're kind of not anti-running back, but you definitely are not a fan of buying running backs, that's for sure, especially at one that's probably going to cost you a bit. What are your thoughts here on Etienne?
I probably wouldn't be selling if I had. I look at how much longer can I viably have this player on my roster. Well, he's in the third year of a rookie contract, but he was a first-round pick. So that means the Jaguars can extend him that fifth year. That could be any point this offseason, by the way. So we might have some clarity on that sometime soon. It could be later in the offseason. We don't know. But like if I can have a running back that gives me top 10 production, like let's be safe with Travis Etienne and say it's not top 2, but top 10 production. And I can have that for 2 more years. I'm probably not selling, right?
Yeah.
Because I can sell in 2 years and get probably considerably less, but I can still get something and take those 2 years of production. And now, look, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't at the running back position, right? Travis Etienne suffers an injury, like, damn, I should have sold. But, just projecting a player on his rookie contract that has 2 more years, that has gotten better every single, like you look last year, a top 17 finish, this year, a top 2. I expect that Jaguars offense to get a little bit better. And I'm a person that I don't think when an offense adds somebody, it necessarily takes away from everybody as much as it helps them have better situations to flourish. So I'd probably not be selling Travis Etienne unless the offer is like a blow my doors off kind of an offer.
Bob, are you scared of Tank Bigsby? Second year breakout next year? Come on.
Are you, Nate? Are you scared of what Tank Bigsby's put on paper at this point? Because I certainly am not. Good times. Who knows? Maybe he still carves out a role. Man. And for what it's worth, we never thought he was going to, take the backfield. Just that he did do something, have a pulse.
Ernest Johnson, baby.
Yeah, he's the king. Moving on to Dominic here. Dominic is a loyal follower. We see him in the comments all the time. And he has a question here. How do you recover from L's losses? I made 2 huge mistakes on a rebuilder and feel bad that it may have set my team back years. Just for an example, I'm assuming he's made some other quote-unquote poor moves. I sold Puka after week 2 for a 24-second, and I'm assuming had a first on there as well, the 112 instead of the 104. I'm assuming he had like 2 firsts to choose from and just ended up on the wrong one is kind of what I'm thinking. Or I guess maybe another trade. I don't know. Either which way, I don't think you can fault yourself for picking one of the wrong firsts that you didn't know where it was going to land, especially if it was, any time in the season that was relatively early. We always talk about, trading with that predictive landing spot in mind of draft picks where, hey, man, this is definitely an early first. This team looks terrible. A lot can happen, and you got to take in the competency of the manager of how they can adjust to changes, ill things happening. How can they adjust when Jake Browning becomes available on the waiver wire and all of a sudden he's a great starter for you down the stretch, whatever the case may be. So I think it's one of those things, just kicking this off. I think you got to take the L on the chin. It is what it is. Learn, evaluate your process, what your process was in that deal. Moving on for Puka for pennies on the dollar to what he's worth now and what he was worth even just a few weeks later. It's just one of those things. Hey, maybe don't sell the guy right off the rip when he's putting up historic numbers. It's one thing if he has that 2 for 105 line and 2 touchdowns or something like that, where it's just not
game.
Sure, whatever the case is, of just not a lot of just ridiculous efficiency, whatever the case may be, maybe sell on those. But when a guy is getting so utilized in an offense after getting a good amount of buzz coming into the season, through preseason, he was the talk of the town there, that one of the best players in camp, whatever the case is, that he's going to be a feature while Kupp misses time. And he was, that came to fruition. I think it's just one of those, you got to evaluate the L itself and not be too hard on yourself, evaluate the process best you can. And just kind of, Zach and you and I have discussed this a lot, especially with teams that have nothing going on in rebuilds when we do roster reviews. If you're interested in roster reviews, check out the description box below. There'll be details there. But on teams that just have nothing going on, you really got to look for every nook and cranny to find value, and exploit where you can, making those waiver wire ads to flip for some draft capital to make up for the value loss that you lost on Puka here, for example. Not going to get that out of a waiver ad, but multiple ads, compounding consistency, all that. Nate, how do you recover from losses or bad deals, bad trades, bad beats, whatever it may be in Dynasty?
Yeah, everyone makes bad trades. I mean, it's not that we make a bad trade, but just it's fantasy football. You don't know how it's going to work out. Whether it's picking up someone's first you think is going to be early and it ends up being late, or hey, I like last year, beginning of the year, I traded away Javonte Williams for Clyde Edwards-Helaire and James Robinson. I mean, it's kind of a wash either way, but Javonte Williams is at least relevant now. Neither one of those guys really are on my fantasy team. So, it happens. You make those trades and you have to do sometimes what you think you have to do for your team. And then if it doesn't work out, you just have to pivot. And sometimes you do put your team in a hole for a year. And that's just how it goes. And then that's why you come over here and you do the roster review with us. And we talk about all the different moves we can make to try to get back to a baseline level, how we can get your team back to a championship level. It's going to take work. That's the thing. If you have something happen and you end up in the hole, you just got to dig your way out. And sometimes you can dig your way up pretty quickly if you can just make the right trades. And like, if you're just active and just kind of pushing around everywhere, you can probably make that turnaround pretty quick. But if you're not as active, it's going to take longer to make that turnaround. So it's kind of that thing. Once you find yourself in a hole, you kind of got to double down and just keep on working to get out of it. If you just are giving yourself time to get out of it, you eventually will, but it might take you 2 or 3 years of that rebuild. If you want to start maybe turning around, you got to kind of go all into the rebuild. That's one way I like to go about it. If we're starting to see it go downhill, just putting pedal to the metal on that full rebuild and trying to get there before anybody else, that can give you a lot of value. It's really all about value at the end of the day. And that's, if you can just start working around the league, trying to pick up value, that will work out for you long-term.
Zach, your thoughts here?
Well, I try to find the silver lining in these types of situations. We're all going to be wrong. It's just a matter of time. Yep. And, the more leagues you have, the more you're going to be wrong. So, first of all, you found Puka, right? That's something to say about your process. You did find Puka, which is, there's only one in every league that found Puka. Now there's another one that bought and stuff like that. So it's, to me, I'm always trying to find the silver lining. Let me give you a good example. I had a lot of shares of Kyren Williams when he started to pick up heat. And I had a lot of shares of Kyren Williams when on rebuilding teams. I didn't really want to have Kyren Williams because, Nate, my philosophy. I'm like, I don't want these points. Get these points off my roster.
Yep.
And so I sold a lot of Kyren Williams. And now look, when I have a rebuilding squad, unless it's like a 2 or 3 year rebuild, I'm usually at least trying to be competitive next year because you don't know what happened. You know how many 6 seeds won in their fantasy championships this year? A lot. So I'm just trying to make it to the playoffs every single year. I don't care if I'm the 1 seed or the 6 seed. So I do feel bad that I sold a lot of Kyren Williams, midway through the season this year. However, I try to find the silver lining in that. Hey, I have the 103 right now because I didn't have Kyren Williams. You got to find the silver lining sometimes in these types of situations. So it may not be the best, right? But for Dominic, I'd say, hey, man, I found Puka. And so for me, that means that my process of, evaluating the rookies or, the players that I take dart throws on, it worked for me last season. So maybe I do that next season and not sell if one of them hits right away. So try to find the silver lining in that. But look, we're all going to take L's. I take L's. Bob takes L's. Nate takes L's. It happens. It's going to happen. You take it in stride and you move on.
Yeah. And look, if you got Puka and you sold him for a second, you probably picked him up for a 4th round pick, maybe off the waiver wire. So you still had a good deal there. You still made profit there. Now, maybe you didn't get the ideal scenario because you didn't keep Puka, but you still made something happen. Now, obviously, opportunity cost, but still made something happen.
And I think it goes to show too that 3rd, 4th round picks, 5th round picks even can be valuable. And I think that having them ain't the worst thing, especially if you have some extra space kicking around in your roster. Don't underestimate the value of those picks and dart throws in general. And just, like I said, or like we said, maybe take a breath before we do all the sell highs on players that show well. But that is what it is. Moving on to the next question here. We got a boatload of draft capital to work with, and he's being greedy. He wants better draft capital, which I love. Question, what would it take to go from the 111 to the 107? I currently have the 1-1, the 106, the 109, the 110, 111, 205, 209, 305, and the 309. First off, I love seeing this much draft capital on teams. Yeah. Whatever your situation is, whether you're rebuilding, whether you're competitive, just having this, if you're in the middle, is great to work with. To move up from 111 to 107, it is a question of if it's one quarterback or super flex. I'm not sure. It doesn't say here in any of the follow-up comments, but I don't think it's a ton. I think you're still kind of in similar tiers here where it's kind of more of the value you're getting out of it is to pick your poison of this tier. So I don't think you have to pay too much. Maybe you're on the very fringe end of that top 7, depending on how it shakes out. So I think I'd maybe start with the 209 and work your way up from there, work to the 205, maybe throw a 25 second. I don't think it needs to be anything drastic to move up this pick. Maybe you throw the 209 at a third next year, something along those lines. Zach, what are your thoughts? What do you think it takes to get up from the 111 to the 107 here?
Well, give me a second here because my dog's just busted.
Okay,
the door
well, fine.
No,
it's not a ghost this time?
No, it's my dogs. My dogs. They
Okay.
love me so damn much. I'm looking at this, and obviously it's got to be. I mean, it's probably got to be the 111 and the 205 right now. I'm not even sure if that would get it done. Nate could answer this better than I. Is there a tier break after 107?
I think there was a bit of a tier break after 107, especially consensus-wise at the moment. Now, obviously, we still got a lot of time until we actually get there. But there does seem to be a pretty clear top 7 right now with the top 3 quarterbacks, the top 3 wide receivers, and then Brock Bowers mixed in there. So that's usually the top 7 I see most places. I think the 111, the 205, like you said, is a good starting point. I think that's probably what you're going to have to pay, if not a little bit more on top of that. It's only going to get more expensive between now and then. So if you're trying to make this deal, I'd start with the 111, the 205, see if I can make that happen. And then I'd be pretty happy if I can get it for that.
All right. Good deal.
Also,
moving on here.
I do want to point out, someone said nobody got Puka off waiver wire in Dynasty. I got Puka off a waiver wire in Dynasty. If you did your rookie drafts in August, no, you didn't. You didn't get Puka off your waiver wire. But if you did your rookie draft back in May, you probably had an opportunity to get Puka off your waiver wire.
Yeah. And I would say too, just, not every league is super deep. I'm in a couple leagues where it's only like 16 to 20 roster spots, including the starters and everything. So not every league is super deep. Puka was a pretty slept on name, I believe, 5th round draft pick in the NFL draft. And if your some drafts are only 3 rounds. So it's very possible that he was kicking around in some, definitely not all. It's possible. But with that said, I'm going to kick this one to you guys first to say something sensible, because in one quarterback, I think it's chalk at this point. It's Marvin Harrison Jr. in one quarterback. Super flex. There's obviously the discussion with a top quarterback there, Marvin Harrison as well. Nate, I'll kick it to you first while Zach controls his dogs. Nate, what do you got going on with the 101? What are you thinking here? What do you got?
Yeah, at the moment, I'm still fully on board the Caleb.
Oh, no. We lost him. Unfortunate.
I know what he was going to say.
He was going to say, we'll take Caleb Williams. Zach, what are you doing at the 101? Oh, now Nate's back. Now Nate wants
I'm back now. It doesn't take me very long to come back these days. I'm still fully on board the Caleb Williams hype train. And until something changes, like if Drake May's landing spot is that much better than Caleb Williams, if Marvin Harrison's landing spot is so great that, I feel confident taking him over Caleb Williams, I'm cool with that. If you have 3 quarterbacks and Marvin Harrison Jr. is the guy that you want, I'm fine with doing that at the 101. Though at that opportunity, I'd probably rather see if I can trade down to the 102 or 103. It's the thing. It's all about value at the end of the day. That's what we always talk about on this channel. And I think the value at the 101 is Caleb Williams, because the quarterback position, if Caleb Williams becomes a top 8 quarterback, which is not anywhere outside of the realm of possibilities for Caleb Williams, then he is absolutely worth the 101 in every single league you play in. Even one quarterback leagues, you could argue he could be worth the 101, 102 if he's truly a top 8 quarterback. So until there's a really good argument for someone else, or team dependent, like I said, if you have 3 quarterbacks, sure, go get Marvin Harrison Jr., but see if you can trade down, because you always want to export that value as much as possible. I don't mind other options, but I'm still fully on board the Caleb Williams train for now.
Zach, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Nate, man. I think that I don't know if it's like prospect fatigue or the fact that there have been some other names. Well, there have been some other names join the conversation, like Nate just said. Now that's there's 3-4 quarterbacks in that conversation. But I'm just examining my dynasty situation, and if it makes sense for me to take Marvin Harrison Jr., I'll take Marvin Harrison Jr. If it makes sense for me to take Caleb Williams, I'll take Caleb Williams. And I always will entertain a trade back offer, like Nate said. So, but I just think like this is not a very difficult decision. And, we as a community, right, were wrong about the Bryce Young, CJ Stroud thing last year, right? And like this goes back to the conversation we just had. Sometimes you just take it. Okay. All right.
I have a lot of Stroud.
I have Stroud
Not
too,
enough,
but I have a lot of Bryce
not
Young
enough.
as well. Like I'm pretty sure what we were saying after the NFL draft last year was like, oh, Bryce Young first, then CJ Stroud, something like that. So, it's just this, like, don't overthink this, man. Don't overthink this. This is really a Marvin Harrison Jr. Caleb Williams discussion to me.
Yeah, and I agree it is between those two. I think my argument, be prepared, we're going on a trip together, boys. My argument or my thought process is with how quarterbacks have been the last couple seasons, where quarterbacks just don't last the season. A lot of them don't. You look at how many quarterbacks actually played a full season this year, especially the top bunch of quarterbacks that were not on your team playing meaningful football in the fantasy football playoffs. And you could have picked up the Jake Brownings of the world, the Joe Flaccos of the world, whatever the case is. I don't know how I feel about investing in quarterback at 101 right now, even with Caleb Williams, who I have massive question marks with because of the ball security concerns that he popped on this season and in previous seasons as well. I think he's a tremendous talent, all that. I think the move is the value says currently and will the quarterback at 101 and Marvin Harrison at 102. But I don't think I'm going to be able to look at somebody picking Marvin Harrison at 101 and be like, nope, that was a dumb pick. I don't think I could do that. I think I'd maybe pat him on the back and say, whether that was your entire thought process or you just wanted a generational wide receiver prospect, I don't know. But either which way, I think there's something to be discussed there. I think the trade down option is the best. Trade down to 102 if you can. Hopefully they need to have a better need at quarterback. And even if they end up, screwing you over, quote unquote, and taking Marvin Harrison Jr. at 101, and then you're like, dang, I was thinking about doing that. You still got value on top of it. You get to go home with another good pick and possibly another trade down option as well, because just like drafts last year when people, or a couple years now, when people passed on Breece Hall 101 or whoever they decide to pass on, that 102 is going to get a ton of offers. You still have that, whatever the case is. There's going to be interest at all of these top picks. A lot of time to figure it out, though. Thankfully, we don't have to have
I got
that
something to say
exact answer today.
I got something to say there, though. Is there, and maybe this is too long of a question to ask right now, but like last year, Jackson Smith and Jigba was like landing spot proof until he landed with the Seahawks. And we're like, oh, man, there's not that immediate opportunity for him to flourish. Yeah. And you saw him kind of get pushed down the draft board a little bit. So is there, is there a scenario? I don't want to say who specifically, but is there a scenario where you could just say, now it just makes sense to draft Caleb 101?
I'm sure there would be, but it's tough because the thing is with JSN, the landing spot is still good long term, and that's the one thing you gotta kind of think about what you're looking to get day one. Are you looking to get some production day one, points on your roster day one? Maybe Marvin and the pick for you. But if you're looking to get points on your roster, a starting quarterback immediately that you can probably plug in your lineup, probably more viable. So I think it comes down to more points than overall situation, talent, et cetera, at that point. But speaking just talent terms, that's kind of where I'm at in general. Nate, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be too many issues with the landing spot for Caleb Williams or the quarterbacks really. But Marvin Harrison Jr., looking at the draft board right now, the only landing spot that would really worry me maybe New England possibly, but the thing is you have plenty of opportunity because there's almost no competition there in the wide receiver room. The Giants, but same thing. I mean, quarterback issues, but hardly any competition for targets and production. So when you're talking about a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm looking at him the same way I look at a lot of these alpha wide receivers we've seen over the last 10 years. DeAndre Hopkins was quarterback proof. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't quite DeAndre Hopkins yet, but we can project him to be somewhere around there. And if he truly is that talent, then, if he goes to the Patriots or he goes to the Giants, we won't have that many worries. Maybe he's not Justin Jefferson right away catching passes from Kirk Cousins his rookie year, but, I mean, he's certainly going to be a 1,000-yard receiver, probably have, 6-8 touchdowns still, even on a team like the Patriots. Come on. I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Moving along. to where should I draft Igbokwe? I don't believe we've had an official declare yet. I think there's still a lot up in the air. If he were to declare, for me, he probably slots in a super flex around that 108 to 109 range, probably in that second grouping of wide receivers for me. Down here, but still like him as a player, as a prospect. Nate, any thoughts here on where you're picking Igbokwe?
Yeah, right now with how much wide receiver talent there is in this draft class, especially at the top, we have a really strong top 5, top 6 wide receivers, and Igbokwe will slot in there if he does declare. But just with the volume at the wide receiver position, I'm thinking, the 110, 112 area for me, maybe even early second, depending on how these running backs turn out. So probably looking between 110 and 202 for me right now.
Okay. Zach, anything to add there on Igbokwe? I don't think you've looked at him too much yet.
No, but I mean, just from what you've seen and heard, mock drafts and whatnot, if he declares, like Nate said, he's probably a late first round pick at this point. And I do think what Nate said will happen. I think either some running backs, maybe Jatavian Sanders, and some quarterbacks will push him into the second round if he declares.
Yep.
All right. Let me find a question here now. Trying to move Kamara this offseason. What can you get for Alvin Kamara this offseason? Zach, what do you think you can get for Kamara? I don't think I think you're lucky to get a late second, third round pick at this point. But Zach, what are your thoughts here?
Man, what can you get for Alvin Kamara this offseason, right?
Yeah.
Who is trading for Alvin Kamara without knowing where he's going, where he has a job, and how he fits into that team? Like, he could very damn well be Leonard Fournette and Kareem Hunt from last year. We have no idea. What I will say to this, and please don't take this personal, David, is that when somebody in my league lists like a player like Alvin Kamara, unless you're taking over an orphan team, if you list a player like Alvin Kamara in the offseason for trade, I publicly denounce you in my league. I'm like, oh, you used him all season long to win games, and now you want my draft pick? No way, buddy. So I don't know. This is a tough one, man, because if you can get a second round pick, I highly doubt you can at this point. But if you can, that's what I'd shoot for. If you could get 2/3, which sounds awful for the production that he had earlier in the year. But it's like we don't know where he's playing and if he's playing next year at the start of the season. So this is a really tough question.
Yeah, Bob, I don't know if I can get rid of Alvin Kamara for that value, to be honest. Because there's a possibility he's not on the Saints next year, but he is under contract for 2 more years. So until there is some stronger rumors about him leaving, I'm still expecting him to be on the Saints. As much as we loved Kendre Miller, he did not do much his rookie year and spent a lot of time injured. I don't think the Saints are necessarily ready to move on from Kamara. And looking at Kamara's production this year, he missed the beginning of the season, still ended up with 75 receptions this year, 17.9 fantasy points per game, which is third among running backs. He's been top 12 every single year of his career, except for last year when he was 13th in points per game. So Alvin Kamara, for me, is one of those players I'm just going to keep on my roster until he's done. I can't get enough value for him. It's, I understand, he could be the next Leonard Fournette, but I think Alvin Kamara's pass catching ability, and I know Leonard Fournette caught a lot of passes when he was with the Jaguars, but that was more so situation than necessarily receiving talent. But Alvin Kamara, we know his ability as a receiver changes the game. There's no reason the Saints are going to move on from him unless they have a much better opportunity. So I think I'm keeping on to Kamara if I can't get more than, at least like a mid-second or maybe a second plus for Kamara, because I understand people aren't going to want to pay that anytime soon, but I'm not going to give him up for a third-round pick when he's probably going to give me at least top 24 production next year. Doesn't matter what team he's going to be on. Even if he doesn't get, many rushing attempts, we can definitely lock him in for probably 50, 60 more receptions next year, and any kind of work on top of that will be enough for me.
He has a $19 million cap hit on a team that's $75 million over the cap right now.
Well, I know the Saints are in a tough situation.
Time to pay the piper.
It's not just like, oh, he'll be back. I have no idea. I don't know what the Saints are going to
do. They're
yeah. That's the problem. Is that he is very productive, but is he $19 million worth of production when you're $75 million over the cap?
Yeah. I don't think he's cooked just like Dalvin Cook yet or anything like that. I think because of his receiving ability, he still offers value going forward until we see otherwise.
I think he's one you got to just weather the storm through the offseason, and maybe you get a chance to sell him during the season next year. Whatever situation you happen to be in, maybe you're trying to, down gear into a rebuild. You're coming off a competitive push. You just whatever you need to retool. You're trying to get him off your roster. Whatever the case is, I think you need to kind of weather the storm and just kind of. I just don't think you're getting fair value for him right now. Maybe you will after the draft, after the situations clear up, whatever the case is. But even with the rookie draft, your rookie drafts incoming, I don't think you're going to get proper pick value. Maybe you can, tier down wide receiver wise, maybe look for players instead of picks. That might help you a little bit too. Look for future picks, maybe 25 seconds instead of 24. Maybe you get your later value back for kicking it back out that much further. But moving along here.
I think this goes right into this. I know there's plenty of questions we got to catch up on, but this goes right into this next question that just popped up. Hold Ekeler with his value so low, because I think the same conversation is with Austin Ekeler, where you're probably not going to. Good luck even getting a third-round pick for Austin Ekeler right now. Everyone is so down on Austin Ekeler, but once again, that receiving works there. I don't think he's going to be a top 12 running back next year, but his value is so low. I think you do have to hold on to him because he's probably not going to be a Charger next year. This is if you're talking about one of the running backs that we don't think is going to be in the same team next year. I think Austin Ekeler is a perfect candidate for that. It's going to be on some other team, and he'll probably be pigeonholed into a more receiving down goal line back, and that's going to be better for him than what he was with the Chargers this year. So if we get him in a smaller role, but it's actually using his strengths, and it's not him creating big plays anymore, explosive plays. It's him around the goal line. It's him catching passes out of the backfield and those swing passes and things like that. So talking about Ekeler, that's another player I would hold on for right now. When he goes to another team, you might have a selling opportunity. Week 2, week 3 of the 2024 season, you might have a selling opportunity, but another player that just doesn't make sense to sell anytime right now.
Just want to say good morning to my wife as well, chiming in the YouTube comments as well. But let's get to a more fun conversation. Not that saying hi to my wife wasn't fun, but talking about running backs that are declining in value certainly aren't. Let's talk about Nico Collins plus what gets me Justin Jefferson and a 10-team Superflex Start 10 PPR. And my first thought when I saw this was almost why? Like why make the pivot up? Because I don't think what you're paying on top of Nico right now is justified in a start 10 where you need voluminous depth, where you can start many good players. I just don't know how worth it is. Maybe in a 10 team where you need your rosters are a little more condensed, there's an argument, but I just don't know what, like, maybe a mid to late first is like where I'm kind of comfortable, but I still don't love that for 2024, where I know I love the mid first right now. It's a tough spot. It's a tough bridge to gap. What are your thoughts, Nate?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely at least a mid first, which means we're talking about one of those top wide receivers. Would you rather have Justin Jefferson or Neighbors/Odunze and Nico Collins? I mean, I'd rather have one of the rookies plus Nico Collins. I mean, Nico, 16.1 fantasy points per game this year. That's 14th among wide receivers. So not quite a top 12 wide receiver, but that's with a rookie quarterback, with a wide receiver that broke out across from him. Going the next year, I expect that to hold and still put up those top 15 numbers, top 20 numbers at worst. But Nico Collins, he was putting up yards after the catch, leading the league in yards after the catch per reception for a good portion of this season. What he's done this year was really, really impressive. And just because he didn't break out in the first 2 years, people are still doubting him. Doesn't make any sense. When a player shows you he's good, a player's good. Doesn't matter what he's done in the past. The NFL and you should also be a what have you done for me lately league. And Nico Collins has done a lot for you lately. So I'm with you here. I'd rather have the first round pick. I'm probably going to have to give up with Nico Collins. You might have to give up a first round Nico and something for Justin Jefferson because, everyone knows Justin Jefferson is the wide receiver 1 or 2 in Dynasty. He's got that name value. He's got that youth with him still. I mean, he's the same age as Nico Collins, I think maybe even younger. So I don't know what you have to add, probably a mid first and something else, maybe a second on top of it to make it really happen. But Bob, I'm with you. I'm with you and Zach. Like, why? Like, just keep Nico and the picks.
I think if you want to upgrade to a top tier wide receiver that is top tier, I'd rather chase someone like Amon-Ra St. Brown at this point because he's going to be so much cheaper. Maybe a second on top of Nico gets you to Amon-Ra St. Brown or darn close to it. Maybe you throw a first, get a second back kind of a thing. I'd much rather do something like that at this point. And Zach, I want to kick it to you. I want to get your thoughts too. I know you kind of pointed in agreement when I first dropped the bomb, but what do you got, Zach?
I don't have much to say that you two haven't said already. Listen, Emerson, if you want to go get JJ, totally cool. But the price you're going to have to pay when you already have what is a borderline wide receiver 1 in Nico Collins, I get it. JJ is like dynasty wide receiver 1. Cool. In start 10, I probably want Nico plus the first, right? We're talking you need a little bit more volume than a start 8 or a start 9 in your starting lineup. So like Nate said, like Bob said, the price that you're going to have to pay when Nico Collins can give you close to JJ production, I'm just not interested in doing, me personally.
Yeah. Moving along, startup. Should I take Deebo Samuel or Rashee Rice? It's an easy Rashee Rice pick for me at this point.
Rashee Rice for me as well.
I'm going Deebo.
Yeah.
I've just never been a big Deebo fan. I know he's got that great ceiling, and we saw it multiple times this season. But look, target competition between all those players there. And number one, I love Deebo when he's healthy, but that's a rare time. And the best ability is availability, right? So I understand the ups of Deebo, but I don't want to keep him around because I also have seen the downs over the last couple of years, and I'll take Rice. I'll take Rice right now.
I'll take Deebo here. I'll be the different one. He's missed Deebo's missed 7 games the last 3 years. It's not a lot. For me, I'm just not like sold on Rashee Rice yet. Yeah, he's the best receiver in a really bad wide receiving core, which I expect to get upgraded in the offseason at some point. And so I think that, and look, I don't know what's going to happen with Travis Kelce. Obviously, I can't factor him retiring into this decision, but I'll just go with the better player on the better offense at this point.
All right. Real quick, I got to get to a super chat here. Don't mind me trying to figure it out. From Devon, also one of our patrons. I want to say thank you guys for everything you all do. Best Dynasty content out there. Entering the second year of this rebuild is 101, 104, 105, 106, 107, 202, 203, 205, 208, 3.4, 5, 25 first, 226 first. Looking good for a rebuild. I mean, this is what you dream to live up to when you are a rebuilding team, to have so much draft capital to play with. And something we'll be talking about and hammering home this offseason is keeping in mind the concept of you don't have to draft somebody with every rookie pick. You can trade down, you can trade out. You're if you're trading down, you're adding more picks probably, or other players, I guess, supplemental players that kind of help fill a lineup. But over the course of this rebuild, I mean, you have enough picks to kind of last you probably, by the time that you're done with this, you'll have a juggernaut, or you should. Not every first round pick is a home run. And that's why we also advertise the concept of trading out. But love this year. Love to see this. This is, when we go into roster reviews, not to shout out those again, but when we go into roster reviews, when we see draft pick rooms like this, our mouths just salivate and we turn into the true carnivores that we are, I guess. If that doesn't sound weird enough, I don't know what does, but what doesn't sound weird is what Nate's going to say to add on to this point here. What do you got, Nate?
Yeah, I mean, we all know drafting is the most fun part of Dynasty Fantasy Football, whether it's a startup draft or the rookie draft, and Devon set himself up nicely. And, this is, like you said, Bob, this is what we love to see. This is what we preach. When you go into the rebuild, go all in on the rebuild, get that draft capital. And you brought up a great point where, you can use some of these picks to go into next year. You can move around the board a little bit. Having that flexibility is the biggest thing. And we have plenty of flexibility here. I don't know what we have in 25 for mid-round picks, but, we're going to start collecting them in this offseason, because you always want to stay a year ahead, especially when you're in a rebuild, because people are devaluing the next year's picks because they're all in on 2024, which makes sense because this class is great. We're excited about it. But 25, they're going to be a good class too. Every class now is good because college football, the product that they're putting out is incredible. The development they're doing is better than ever. And the games of pro football and college football are closer than ever before with how they run their offenses. So these transitions for these players are better than ever. We've been seeing it. Used to be a 3-year breakout for wide receivers. Now it's like if you don't break out the first year, you're not relevant at all. So the more draft picks we can get, the more ahead we can get. This is what we want to see. This is what we always are preaching for these rebuilds. So I love seeing this, and just thank you for being a Patreon. Thank you for the super chat. We appreciate you. And this is why you want to get in the Patreon. This is why you want to get in the Discord. That's why you want the roster reviews. We're here to help. And thank you, Devon. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Zach. Anything else to add here?
Yeah, I'm interested in this first round, man. Like, what are we doing here real quick with these? We got 5 first-round picks. Obviously, we don't know league or team
Probably taking a couple quarterbacks.
Yeah, I'm using 3
Yep.
of the 5 picks. I'm using 3 of the 5, and I'm
Sure.
probably moving 2, whether that's for players or for future picks. I just want to give Devin a little something here, right? I got 5 first-round picks. I'm probably moving 2 of these somehow.
We also have early seconds, which I like early seconds this year because I think you can pick up some nice running backs, or if those running backs go in the first, you get some nice wide receivers as a consolation. So I like the early seconds as well.
Yeah. All right. So Zach, do you want to run through who we're picking with these picks? Is that what you were hinting at?
No. I just wanted to get out of these 5 first-round picks, let's take. I don't know any team content. I don't know if it's one quarterback. I don't know if it's super flex.
Fair enough.
We don't have a lot of information, but just like a general guideline, the way I like to do is I'm not using all these picks. As a matter of fact,
Sure.
I sent you a trade I made yesterday for a first-round pick, so I would definitely do as we discussed here. Let's either buy some players that are proven talent, or we can push some of these back depending on, is this a 2025 rebuild? Is this a 2024 rebuild? So on and so forth.
All right. Good deal. I'm going to look for more questions. Got another super chat come in. Wanting to get to, I want Mahomes. What is the cost? I think he's worth more than the 101. I absolutely agree. As much as Mahomes was not as Mahomes-esque as he has been in previous years, definitely think he's worth more than the 101 for sure. It's tough to maybe get that right now because of coming off a down year. But Nate, I want to hear your thoughts on this one.
Yeah. So Mahomes, this is like the best time to buy Mahomes because everyone is kind of down on him. The Chiefs had a bad year, even though they're still like the 3rd seed. Mahomes had a bad year, even though he's still like a top 10 quarterback in the league. Caleb Williams, we're talking about as the 101. We're hoping Caleb Williams becomes Mahomes at best.
Right.
Like, just because Mahomes had a down year does not mean that Mahomes, being only 25, 26, however old he is, isn't still going to be a future Hall of Famer, still one of the best quarterbacks for the next decade in the NFL. Mahomes is one of those players you get on your lineup and you set and forget it for years at the quarterback position. I remember when I first got in the Dynasty, listening to the Dynasty nerds, Rich Dodson would always talk about how in his original Dynasty league, he got Drew Brees really, really early on and just kept Drew Brees in his lineup for 10 years. Patrick Mahomes gives you that kind of versatility, gives you that kind of longevity. And this is the time to go get him because people are down on him. It used to be you have to pay up 3 firsts, maybe more than that to go get Mahomes. I still think you have to pay somewhere around that value, but it is deflated right now. I think you can do like if you're still going to do 3 firsts, like you can do like 2 mid first and maybe like a 25 first in super flex. I think you could probably make that happen. If you have the 101, I would trade the 101 straight up for Mahomes, any league, any day, no problem. If I can get that. And I think you might be able to get that closer to draft day because people are going to look back at Mahomes, look back at the season and say, they're going to doubt him. They're going to doubt him for some reason. I get it. The wide receiver core wasn't great. They haven't surrounded him with a ton of weapons, but it's Patrick Mahomes. We saw Tom Brady for years put up good numbers without any good wide receivers outside of a couple guys. So Mahomes, he's going to make it happen. I'm not too worried about him moving forward. I'm going to go after him, whether that's 3 first, like I said, 2 mid, and maybe a 1 for next year. If I have the 101, I'm going to move that. Can I do a mid and a late first and throw a player in there? I'm willing to pay up for Mahomes right now. I want that kind of guy in my lineup.
Yeah, and I do want to touch on, I do have the feeling, we don't have it for sure, but I do have the feeling that it might be a 1 quarterback because he's talking about moving Mahomes to try to get the 101 to get Marvin Harrison Jr., which I think to put that assumption on there would lead me to believe that it's 1 quarterback. I don't know for sure. I think at this point, I'd still roll with Mahomes, even in a 1 quarterback, still probably
pretty
quarterback
equal,
1.
Yeah.
It's probably a little more equal, but I think 100% if it were to be super flex, 1,000,000%, stick with Mahomes. I wouldn't move off. And he did add additional context as well. If it's a super flex or 1 quarterback, I'm still not great about moving Mahomes in this. With Fields' uncertainty ahead, I think he's still a great player. I think he's a starter somewhere. But with Deshaun Watson, we've touched on him on this channel plenty about just, I want out of that situation. Whatever's going on there, don't want anything to do with it. And in that case, since I don't believe in the player, I'm not going to move other players I do believe in to further de-solidify a position where I think it's really solid right now. But I don't hate your mindset. If you're looking to move a player, move off of Watson, give this guy his quarterback. You're talking about this guy needs a quarterback, move one of the other 2. and maybe you don't get the 101 out of it. Maybe you get something lesser. I'd rather just keep Mahomes. I don't think now is a great time to sell Mahomes because, as we talked about, kind of a lower output season than we're accustomed to with him. So
now, here's a trade offer for Patrick Mahomes that someone put in the comments, Bob. Someone offered Cousins, a late first, and 2 late firsts for them to go get Patrick Mahomes. What are you guys' thoughts on this?
Yeah,
I'm assuming this is super flex, by the way.
Zach, you go ahead.
Say the trade one more time here, Nate.
So this guy has Patrick. The other guy has Patrick Mahomes. Old school here is looking to get Patrick Mahomes, and the offer that he was given, if he wants Patrick Mahomes, is Kirk Cousins, a late first this year, and 2 late firsts next year. So it's 3 firsts, all late, and Kirk Cousins or Patrick Mahomes.
I don't think that's enough. There's too much uncertainty with Kirk Cousins there. Late first are very questionable picks in terms of starters. That's your Quentin Johnston, your Jahan Dotson areas. And look, those are good players, but if these late first don't do very much for me when I'm trading, like you said, Nate, a start and never ever worry about this kind of a quarterback. And you might get decent quarterback production out of Kirk Cousins for a year or two. We don't really know. It's too soon for me to give you an educated guess as to what you're going to get out of Kirk Cousins. But I'm taking the rest of this trade and saying 3 late first just doesn't do it for me.
So you take Mahomes in this opportunity because this guy's trying to get Mahomes.
Oh, I take Mahomes. Oh yeah. I'll take
Mahomes
this deal easily. If I can get that done for some late first, whoo! Oh man,
Bob.
Yeah, I think I lean that way as well. I think it's probably more fair than it isn't. Cousins, I'm not going to go ahead and speculate that he's going to fall off a cliff or anything like that. So assuming the production is still relatively okay. 3 late first, though, I mean, pretty cheap to go add Mahomes a long-term fix. He's not a one and done kind of guy. So with that all said, I'm going to go look for another comment to get to because we are all over the shop right now. But
I'd like to see if we can get a second back on top. If we can get Mahomes and a second for that, because I know we were hesitant there, and that was the deal was offered to us. But if old school can go back and say, let's do this deal, but give me a second this year on top, I'll take that all day.
Yeah, I know we have more than 21 likes now, but hey, if you're enjoying and you're watching along, leave a like on the video. Easiest way to support the channel is leaving a like, sharing videos with a friend, share it with somebody who plays Dynasty. Subscribe is a huge help as well.
We at 10K yet, Bob?
Not quite. We are sitting at 9,986. We are 14 subscribers away. So if you are out there and you are watching along and you are not subscribed, or you have anyone in your family who is not subscribed, even if they don't watch Dynasty Football, go get their phone, go onto the YouTube app, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with all of their friends and all of their friend groups as well. But with that said, let's get another question on the board here. I got a bunch of starred ones that I thought were interesting. I want to get to this one because there's a stray at Zach here, and I just found it funny. Am I insane for zigging while others zag going into 2024 with Bijan, Brees, Hurts, the 106, McBride, Monty, but my wide receivers are a little faulty? Sitting around with Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, and a bunch of trash like Jonathan Mingo. I saw this and I just lost it when I saw this comment pop up. I think it's all about going where the value is. And I think, Bijan and Brees right now, good pieces to have. They're long-lasting running backs, or expected to be at this point. We do need to focus on getting some wide receiver depth on this, or not even wide receiver depth, some high-end wide receiver talent. That 106 for me, it's penciled in for a wide receiver one way or another, more than likely, and the value is going to be there too. What are you guys thought with this one?
Yeah, I think you could add a wide receiver here at 106. Did he say if it's a super flex or? I
don't believe he did, unfortunately.
So I didn't mention any quarterbacks, so
it was only Hurts. It could be a 1 quarterback league. So
sure, yeah, that's kind of my thought.
I think that there is a realm where Zay Flowers and Tank Dell do take a step forward next year. Those were 2 very productive rookie wide receivers. What's to say that they don't perform better fantasy stat wise than they do this year? That's a very real possibility, but I would like to have some more security at the wide receiver position. Like, a little bit more safe, like a DJ Moore, maybe Like, obviously, you want a Justin Jefferson, a Jamar Chase, and A.J. Brown, an Amon-Ra St. Brown. Yes, those are expensive. Can I get a DJ Moore, who at this time of the year is not the most expensive player that you can plug into your lineup and not really have to worry about?
Okay. And he did mention it was super flex.
Okay. Nice.
So
Thank
the
you.
106, we could pick up a top 3 wide receiver. And I think that's where my head would be headed. Because I do think that, Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, that's pretty solid wide receivers. You don't have a top wide receiver 1. And I'd be hesitant to say even have a competitive wide receiver 2 at this point. Tank Dell, I think, could become that. Zay Flowers could become that. But at this point, you're missing that top 2 if you really want to be a competitive team at your wide receiver position. And the thing is, we can use that 106 to get one of those top wide receivers, and they can hopefully fill one of those roles as that top 2 wide receiver. But if we have this good of a team throughout, we can probably find a veteran for a value that can perform as a top 24 wide receiver for your team going into the season. So, I mean, like this year we saw DeAndre Hopkins. He was super cheap and in not great situation, but he still put pretty good numbers on a somewhat weekly basis. And there's some other wide receivers. Adam Thielen at the beginning of the year, obviously one of the top wide receivers. So I think if you have enough going for you around your team and you just really need to fill in that top wide receiver, you can find that production at the wide receiver position with some veterans. You don't have to go get all the young studs at the wide receiver position because it's so deep and those guys are so productive going into like their early 30s that, I don't want you to go and pick up Adam Thielen now, but who's next year's Adam Thielen? Who are those veterans that people are going to start devaluing, but it's still going to be productive next year? I know one that is still kind of expensive, but definitely devalued, and someone I'm going to be targeting a lot in the next month or two, Stephon Diggs. Because Stephon Diggs had a terrible end to his season, and he is there with Josh Allen. Gabe Davis is a free agent, and the other wide receiver we're worried about there is Khalil Shakir, who I like, but is not going to be any kind of competition to Stephon Diggs. Come on, Stephon Diggs, a great target as a veteran wide receiver who can fill that wide receiver 1 slot for your competitive team this year.
And I think you just answered our buddy Coco Thunder's question. Who's your next under the radar buy low for the offseason, a la Mike Evans last year? I don't hate the pick. I think whether the production comes next year, I think your process is right. I'm a little suspect that, I don't have as high hopes for Diggs next year. And that's just because, you're buying into a player where the cliff is right there. Whether they're going to get pushed off next year or not, that's the question. You're linked up with a good quarterback, absolutely. But I think that's a good pick. Zach, do you have a thought here on who a good under the radar buy low is? Maybe, not necessarily an older vet, but anybody who's kind of a good buy low right now.
I'm gonna stick with an older vet here. I don't even know if I can use the term under the radar, but I am going to be targeting in some situations Devontae Adams. I think that there's a situation where he either is traded or like the Raiders have to address the quarterback position, right? You look at Devontae Adams this year, I think he was still wide receiver 15. Let me pull him up here. He was wide receiver 14 this year, playing with Jimmy Garoppolo and Aiden O'Connell. 250 fantasy points in 16 weeks. I mean, I don't see next year being any worse than that. So if I'm in a situation where I need a competitive wide receiver, the cost there doesn't match up with what the cost of Mike Evans was last year, or maybe even what the cost of what Nate said was Stephon Diggs is going to be. You're probably going to have to pay a little bit more for Devontae Adams. But I can see Devontae Adams outperforming his fantasy production this year in 2024. And that's what I'm trying to do there is, how my strategy is I'm trying to buy players that will outperform their ADP or their cost or their production from a year before.
Yep. Also, one more shout out. I think Keenan Allen's got another year in him. He just set a career high in receptions this year, I'm pretty sure. If not, he missed the last couple games. I'm not sure if he actually got there, but he was right there at the end of the season to set a career high. And currently wide receiver 37. I know he's going to be 32 going into next season, but I think he's got one more season in him because Mike Williams coming off the injury. Quentin Johnson has not been what the Chargers wanted them to be. I don't know if they go address the wide receiver position again, but even if they do bring in another rookie wide receiver, Keenan Allen's got one more year where he's going to be that slot target, the main target for Justin Herbert. So I think Keenan Allen's a really good buy right now as well. Because he was injured at the end of the season, his value is lower right now. And of course he is, about to be 32. But if you can get one more year out of him, he's going to give you a top 24 production next year when he's healthy.
Speaking of old players, and this is just something I hate. The question is, does Puka's value drop off when Stafford retires? I hate hypotheticals of all kinds, and speculating retirement is just one that I just can't do, because he could retire this offseason. He could retire next offseason. He could retire 5 years from now. We don't know. Tom Brady went on to play till he's 45. Not saying Matthew Stafford's going to do that, but it's just one of those things. I hate the speculation for retirement. We've seen it with Kelsey as well. Like, oh, he's hooking up with Taylor Swift now. Now he's going to go retire. Makes sense, I guess. Why not, right? Whatever. But I can't do it. I don't think, because you can make this discussion with any wide receiver that, oh, when they're not playing with the quarterback they're doing well with now, are they not going to be good anymore? And absolutely, the question is, or the answer is yes, it's possible. But it's also likely they find somebody to come in as a stopgap, or they find their next rookie quarterback later in the draft at a value. They've been good at drafting late so far. Who knows? I'm not willing to devalue Puka because his quarterback might retire next year. Because in all honesty, there were people that thought Tua was going to retire last year. And you think back to that. Were you selling Tyreek Hill because you thought Tua was going to retire? No, because everybody hated Tua anyway. So moving on from this discussion, if anybody else has anything to add there, feel free. But
leave my brother alone.
To get that in there.
So that got a little heated after my laugh attack with the previous one. Something I like here is selling Etienne. We were talking about him earlier for Garrett Wilson the week before the championship. Went on to win it. Hey, I think it worked well. I think it's a decent enough process trade to begin with. You're getting in on a top 10 dynasty wide receiver for a top 10 dynasty running back, or top 10-ish dynasty running back. Yeah, I'm pretty in on this one to begin with. But see, we got people thinking Puka's going to come down to earth next year. Hey, go buy Puka from them if they still have him kicking around either which way. But all right. Hey, guys, I have Hurts, Anthony Richardson, Justin Jefferson, Bijan, Ramondre, Pitts, Trey Palmer, Trey Tucker, Hyatt, McLaughlin, P. Ryan.
Really fell off a cliff there.
Right. I know. We were doing really good, and then we just started sliding downhill. I have a late first, no second, a bunch of thirds, and no first next year. This is a 14-teamer. How do I address depth? This is rough. This is one of those that sell everybody, sell the farm. Is that where you're getting at, Nate?
I mean, like we said, that fell off a cliff pretty quick. There is a lack of depth here, and obviously Chad knows that. It is one quarterback, so take that into account. We have two exciting quarterbacks. We can definitely try to move off one. It's 14 teams, so quarterbacks should be slightly more valued than a regular one quarterback league. That's 12 team. They're a little bit harder to come across. So I would look at maybe moving off of Hurts or A-Rich, trying to see if I can get a valuable wide receiver there, or preferably a mid-tier wide receiver that I like, maybe like a Jaden Reed and a draft pick on top of that. Because I think at this point, what you got to do is you got to take these studs and you got to diversify. How can you take one valuable asset and turn it into two assets that you think are valuable and will continue to gain value? Yeah. That's really what you're trying to do here. That at its core, you're trying to take one valuable thing, turning into two valuable things. Now, those two valuable things obviously aren't going to be as valuable as the one thing, but if you're looking forward, you're hoping that the combined value of those two things is going to surpass the one value of an Anthony Richardson, a Justin Jefferson, a Bijan Robinson.
Zach, your thoughts here?
This is a tough one. Do we have the start size of this league?
I do not see one following it up.
Okay, I'm just gonna go with a hypothetical, right? Let's just say it's start 10. 140 players. This is tough, man. I'm in Nate's 14-team league, and it's slim pickings.
It's a tough league, man.
Also, start 2 tight ends, which is nuts. Yeah, this is tough. This one's tough because I think what makes it really tough is you have no first next year.
Yeah.
And so the problem with that is a rebuild is you don't have your own first, So I think what Nate said here is what really it has to apply is, can you stay relevant because it serves you no purpose to tank? But you're going to have to, like Nate said, the word is diversify here. Either Hurts, A-Rich, Jefferson, Bijan, I might try to capitalize on the Bijan hype still, Don't know what's going to happen there in Atlanta with Arthur Smith. This is a really tough team here because you're kind of stuck in the middle and you don't have your own first round pick. So I'd start trying to add some more picks next year in 25 seconds, thirds, stay relevant. If it's start 8, you might have a better chance because you have that top end talent with Hurts and Jefferson and Bijan. If it start 10, it's going to be tough unless one of these 3, Palmer, Tucker, Hyatt, they break out, which I don't see.
It's start 9. It's one quarterback, 3 wide receiver, 2 running back, 1 tight end, 2 flex.
So that's 126 players that are meaningful. That's tough, man. So I think what Nate said really applies here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the best strategy, if you can pull it off, is to right now, first priority, go get your 25 first back. Get your 25 first back if you can. That is the number one thing you want to do because at that point, you control your destiny. Like Zach said, at this point, you don't control your first round pick, which really sucks because you're probably going to be going into a rebuild. Looking at this team, you're probably going into like a 2-year rebuild. You're looking to get back into competition in 2026, most likely. Or maybe the 2025 season if you can get that 25 draft capital, but we don't have a lot of draft capital to work with right now. So that seems kind of unlikely. So, I think this is one of those ones where you do, kind of really go into the full rebuild, especially in a 14 league, because you got to build up that depth from the get-go. Trading off these guys, trying to get your 25 first back. That way you can control that. That way you can tank in 2024 point-wise and get a top pick in 2025 because that's going to be more valuable than almost anything you do. Is getting your 25 first back is going to be the most valuable thing that you can do at this point. And this is the time to get it because we're still looking at 24. So this is the cheapest your own pick's going to be in 25.
Yeah, I agree with all the points mentioned, boys. Moving back to Lance here with an interesting topic that I wanted to kind of touch on. What is Chuba Hubbard's value? Do you think he'll have a starting role next season? Too much concerned with the offseason, apparently. Thanks for all the great content, fellas, in the corrected comment there
underneath.
He corrected it. He saw what he was doing. So with that said, I think I don't
do though.
Yeah, I had to provide context to the fix. There we go. It's full circle, I guess. But with Chuba Hubbard, and I think this is just an idea to have with all running backs right now, with how the landscape, the way it is, if you can get your hands on anybody with a pulse at this point, do it. If you have extra roster space kicking around and you can pick up a guy who's a Chuba Hubbard or, any of these guys that were just kicking around on waivers throughout the season that end up being helpful, the Ty Chandlers of the world, if you can get these guys or even just throw them into existing trades, peruse your trade partners roster with whatever deal you're already working on, I promise that a lot of these guys are not looked at very highly. But the thing is you don't know what's going to happen with the running back situation. You don't know what's going to happen with the landscape. This offseason, there's a ton of free agents. Allegedly, this running back class sucks, although the hero has arrived that we were all looking for.
Cody
Jonathan Brooks. No, in Jonathan Brooks. Maybe Schrader, too. Schrader the Shredder. I don't know. But, yeah, like that nickname. I thought of that the second I saw his name. No big deal. But coin it, pin it. I love it. But I think, whether or not he has a starting role, because I would not look at Chuba Hubbard and be like, there's a starting running back next year. Yeah. But you look at guys like Donta Foreman who have continued to go on and find work. Chuba Hubbard, I think, can do the same thing. I think there's a lot of running backs out there right now that, Zach Moss, I believe, is a free agent. He's a guy who I think can go find work that, I made an effort to go buy in some leagues. I made an effort to go pick him up in a league because he was cut because, JT's back. This guy sucks now. Whatever, it's fine. Went and picked him up on a rebuild because whether or not I have business having running backs on my roster, there's a good enough chance that he's going to be starting games next year, almost just as much like the quarterback position right now. Running backs, quarterbacks, whoever there is with a pulse out there, especially if they're on waivers. I'm not saying go buy these guys straight up for third-round picks, but see if you can add them into these deals that you're already making, go through the players roster that you're working with already, and just see if you can get them as a throw-in, because that's what I'm looking to do, probably more than I should, but that's my thoughts on this comment more than anything, more than just Chuba in general. I'm looking to throw these guys into deals, not go select these guys in deals. Probably valued around a third-round pick at absolute most, but probably more like late third-ish if you can.
Yeah.
Anything else to add there, boys?
I think it's good to have cheap running back depth, guys that you know are going to have some opportunity. That's always valuable. We saw it this year. You're sometimes down to your fifth, sixth running back when you're setting that lineup come week 8, week 9, week 10. So having a Chuba is definitely helpful. I think he's going to be relevant next year. I don't know if he'll be the starter. I don't know if Miles Sanders is going to be the next year. He might be a one and done in Carolina. So I think Chuba has a chance. I do think that he's not a guy that's going to hold that position for very long, but I mean, he finished the year as a starter. There's a good chance he starts next year as a starter. I don't know if he's going to finish next year as a starter, though. That's the thing we see with running backs. Whoever your starting running back is, if it's not a top guy, it usually fluctuates. So I think he's a decent, add-in, like you said, to trades, someone just to try to get in your depth, but not someone I'm actively going after. And I definitely don't want to spend anything more than, like a mid-late third on a guy like Chuba Hubbard, especially at this point. Buying running backs early in the offseason is always a risk. There's not really many places for running backs value to go up in the offseason. Usually it's going down in some way, especially the guys that aren't rookies or second-year players. So that's my thoughts on this comment. I do want to get to another comment real quick, Bob.
Yes,
Juan Flores over there. He said his championship is today, Week 18 championship, and we're the only people online right now, so he needs some help. What quarterback is he choosing today, Jalen Hurts or Justin Fields? Now, Eagles are playing the Giants. Fields and the Bears are playing the Packers.
You play Justin Fields against my Packers.
Exactly.
You play him because they cannot deal with running quarterbacks. So they have a long-standing history. Their defense is bad enough as it is, although they've been playing, I don't know, with a pulse from time to time here, streaks of genius. But overall, I would probably go with Fields today as opposed to Hurts. But Hurts has a good matchup too. He's playing Washington, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He's playing the Giants. He's playing the Giants, not Washington.
Oh, I'm sorry, my bad.
And last time he played the Giants about 2 weeks ago, he had 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 301 yards. He might have had a touchdown.
Any rushing touchdowns? He should.
Probably. He had one.
A load of them. I lean Fields. It sucks that you have to pick between one or the other because I think they're both pretty solid options, and it's probably just going to be the wrong one. So, that is to say, I would lean Fields.
I would
against
lean
my
Fields
Packers. They need to have a really good showing, I think, to the Packers do to have, to be able to stop this offense as, tumultuous as they've been. The Packers defense has been just as bad. I'm going to roll with, I think I'm going to roll with them in this one, I hate to throw out the intangibles, but all the news with, this is their Super Bowl. Not that I'm not that way. I don't hate Bears fans or Bears teams at all, but the fact that they're out there, they got their bulletin board material. Let's keep the Packers out of the playoffs. I'm gonna go Fields here against and we're missing some defensive pieces as well. So, not great overall, but that's where I'd go. Man, Week 18 championships. That is
terrible. It's terrible. I just want to add on to that real quick. I'd also go Fields. If you look at Hurts on the road this season, much splits. The splits are not as good on the road as they are at home. He was QB5 a couple weeks ago against the Giants, but that was a home game. I tend to lean with Fields here as well.
Nice. Good deal. Just wanted to pin this shout out real quick. Yo won my first championship this year. Congrats to you, crumply heads. Shout out to all the first time championship winners, all the championship winners out there, whether you followed us all year or not, found us somewhere in the middle or finding us now. Love that. Shout out your wins in the comments as well. Whether you're winning or, hey, maybe you won the 101, either which way, it's still a win to me. So love to see it. Appreciate the love here. Moving along, I want to get to some rookie questions here. Who are some mid-second or third-round guys you got your eyes on? Guys like Jonathan Brooks, as formerly mentioned. I don't know if he's a second-round pick for much longer, but Devontae Walker, Tez Walker, or Xavier Legette are guys that intrigue our buddy Joe here. Nate, I'm going to tell you right now, I am not in on Devontae Walker. And he is choosing now to buzz out of connection. So I'm going to say right now, I'm not huge on Devontae Walker. And Nate. Take the limelight from Nate, I guess. But sometimes the internet is not friendly to our buddy Nate. But he's back, and he now knows that I don't like Devontae Walker. But I do like Xavier Legette a good bit for now. Still early in the process, still a lot of film to dive into. These evaluations are not set in stone. They're not done. I just have questions with Devontae Walker when he is not running a go route or a streaker down the field. If you want a guy to go win downfield, Devontae Walker is your dude. I am all about that. But when it comes to scoring fantasy points reliably, that's where I have a hiccup with Devontae Walker. I don't think he's a huge red zone option. I have concerns with his short area route running and things like that. But like I said, I'm not super into him yet. Only watch a handful of games, but do like Xavier Legette, and I think Xavier Legette's going to end up being the better value more than likely at the end of the day. And Jonathan Brooks, I don't think he might last further than he probably should, because he's not going to be able to get all the evaluation right. He's not going to be able to perform at the combine testing, all this stuff. He's going to be, and he's probably going to be the value because he's not going to be able to play much year one, not at full capacity at least, coming off of that ACL injury that we don't know the full extent of. Unfortunately, with college players, we just don't get to know that. But things you should know: we are 6 subscribers away now from 10,000. So, as I mentioned before, if you are not subscribed currently or have not liked the video yet, please like the video if you're enjoying it. Gonna stick around with you guys all offseason, go through a ton of stuff. We are going to run through things like rookie draft strategy, rookie discussions, talking about rookies we like and dislike, roster construction, offseason strategies, mistakes to avoid, an upcoming video, what did we learn in 2023, talking over some injured players as well, what to do with them and what not to do with them. So subscribe along, enjoy the fun, come along for the ride with us. It's one of the easiest ways to support the channel, along with that like button. So
totally free to subscribe. Totally
it's
free.
Free to subscribe, free to like the video, no problems there. And if you want to go a little deeper with us, as the ticker along the bottom is showing, going to patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind, bonus podcast. That community Discord is huge. Everybody loves Discord. It's all beautiful and organized, easy to navigate, so on and so forth. But Nate, maybe some other mid, second, third round guys you like. What are your thoughts on these guys? As Joe alluded to, what are your thoughts here?
I love Jonathan Brooks. Brooks is currently my RB1 in this class,
Me too.
pending Travion Henderson coming out, declaring or not. But I love Jonathan Brooks, what he brings to the table. Hopefully he can come back healthy, because what he did for Texas this year was really, really impressive. So if he's around mid-second, he's going to be one of the best values in the entire draft this year. So I'm looking forward to hopefully him staying in that area. Devontae Walker, I do like Devontae Walker a good bit. I think he's also like a mid-second round player right now. His ability to get down the field and win is definitely impressive. Bob, if you go back and look at his time at Kent State, you really get to see his yards after the catch ability. Because you got to remember, he came into UNC midway through the season, didn't get to, really get involved in that offense early, didn't have all that practice time, to be there. So what we saw this year was Devontae Walker just going out there and playing on pure talent with North Carolina. If you go back and watch the 2022 film at Kent State, you see a more polished player because he knows what he's doing in that offense. And you see him win short. You see him win after the catch and things like that. So I'm excited for Devontae Walker and what he's going to do during this pre-draft process. Xavier Legette, 5th-year breakout. So we have some questions.
Yes, that's the question.
We talk about it all the time, but he's good. He was very impressive this year for South Carolina. So someone we're going to keep an eye on. He's that size-speed combo that does seem to be pretty risky. So personally, as much as I like the film, I like what we've seen, but the analytics aren't great because he is a 5th-year breakout, because he is that size-speed combo that we know teams love because they think they can develop it, but doesn't always work out into a really good technique wide receiver who's going to be able to win at the NFL level.
Yeah. Oh, well, good timing on that cutout there, Nate.
Oh.
He'll be back soon, I'm sure.
I wanted to surprise Nate with my guy.
Is it? I think I know who it is. Is it the guy you texted me about?
Yes, it is.
While you were supposed to be looking at other players.
Yes, it is.
And you texted me about this, and I'm like, he wasn't on your list of players.
I know, but I can't stop watching his film.
Who is it?
Man.
Who is it?
It's Jacob Cowing.
Yes. Come on, Jacob Cowing, one of the best slot receivers in this draft class.
Watching his film, man, and you look at some of his intangibles. I think he's 5'11", 175, a 5th-year guy, not necessarily a 5th-year breakout, transferred from UTEP, but lines up. He's able to line up all over the field. 70% in the slot though, and then 65% of his yards are yards after the catch. But you look at like his, especially this year with Arizona State, or Arizona, I should say. Sorry, not Arizona State. He this game against USC was insane. And I know everybody lit up USC, but 10 for 88 with 4 touchdowns. And then I think it was the Alamo Bowl a couple weeks ago, he was the MVP of the Alamo Bowl, 7 receptions, 152 yards, 2 touchdowns, including the game-winning 60-yard touchdown. Just a guy that can make plays, get those yards after the catch. So for me, I'm really looking at Jacob Cowing, man. I kind of like you want your guys to have that day 2 draft capital. I don't know if Jacob Cowing will be a 3rd round pick, But if he's a 4th or 5th round pick, I'll be hyper targeting Jacob Cowing in like 3rd round of my rookie drafts.
I think that's a great shout out for a 3rd round pick. I think he's right there on that cusp of day 3 or day 2. I personally would pick him in the 3rd round. I think he's got that much talent out of the slot. We're talking about a guy, like you said, 5'11", 175, but 33 career touchdowns in college, including 13 touchdowns this year. I don't want to say he's the next Tank Dell, but we also saw Tank Dell, who was a little bit smaller, obviously not 5'11", but still light, still winning the red zone. And Jacob Cowing has done that as well out of the slot. So I really like Cowing. I don't think he's quite as dynamic as Tank Dell, but I think he's going to be a great slot receiver at the next level and someone that we should definitely be taking a look at. So great 3rd round shout out there, Zach. I love that. Another player I wanted to shout out is Adonai Mitchell. Someone I've really fallen in love. I don't know if he's going to make it to the mid-second, but with how many wide receivers are in this class, and everyone has their favorite wide receiver. Like I have Adonai Mitchell over Keon Coleman, but there's probably plenty of people that have Keon Coleman over Adonai Mitchell.
Slander.
I know, right? So Adonai Mitchell might be available for me early second, mid-second. He's a guy that he just has some of the best hands in this class. His ability to win at the catch point, win across the middle of the field too, is what really impressed me. He's not just a guy that can win contested catches in the end zone and down the sideline, but he wins across the middle of the field. And I thought he was the best wide receiver for Texas this year, better than Xavier Worthy. So Adonai Mitchell is a guy I'm really targeting in the mid-second of my 2nd round mocks.
Fair enough. Well, with some rookie talk in the books, I'm sure we'll get to more.
Nate, did I make you proud?
You made me proud. I'm very proud. Jacob Cowing's a great call there.
Jacob Cowing is good stuff. And speaking of what might be good stuff, somebody draft pick I dreaded, and mostly because we already drafted a frickin' tight end. Do we think Tucker Kraft has taken over the tight end role in Green Bay moving forward, or will things shift back to Musgrave, or are we dreading a snap split next season? And I do think that I don't think there's any way you just say Musgraves is done. I don't think we're at that point yet. I do think Kraft will have the upper hand coming into next season and through the rest of this season as we go along. But I think that you look at what Tucker Kraft has done, and he's been solid. I think he's more of that, which is what he was brought in more for to do, was run blocking and things like that. I think he's more built for that than he is receiving, but he's done really well in a receiving role as well. So when you have a guy that can do both versus a guy that's really just your down the field stretch threat, I have questions with that. It's giving me kind of, and I'm not saying it's going to be to this level. It's just giving me that kind of vibes. We are all about the vibes here in 2024.
Love vibe scouting.
we're vibe scouting now, but it's giving me some of the how the same feeling we had when Mark Andrews versus Hayden Hurst happened. And it's obviously different draft capital that's involved, but it's similar. Nobody was really pegging Mark Andrews to be the guy for a long time. It was, first round pick, Hayden Hurst. This is going to be great. Primarily a receiving option. And that, and it's a freak injury that Musgrave just had. It's not like a normal, knick-knack. It's not like Greg Dulcich, whose hamstrings are made of butter or anything like that. But it is one of those things. I think Kraft has the upper hand. I wouldn't call it set in stone by any stretch, but I would lean Kraft if I was, able to add him in some of those throw-in deals, especially in tight end premium. I'm probably looking to do that. It's pretty. Do you guys have any extra thoughts
that you're sitting here talking about?
I take full credit for that because of what happened during the draft, where I flipped my lid when Tucker Kraft was drafted. If you want to see that, you got to go to patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. I believe we got that on video somewhere. But a lot of obscenities being shouted that we cannot share here. But I know I have some more comments starred or set aside to get to. Don't mind me. To move up one pick.
3rd round pick.
5 to 1 to 4.
Right now.
3rd round pick is all. I think because you're in the same tier, it shouldn't be too much. However, you are, on the cusp of maybe not being able to get a quarterback. There should be 3 quarterbacks in the top 5, I think. Top 4 for sure, if it's super flex, in fact. But yeah, I don't think it should be much, but it always depends on what your league mate is asking for and if he's willing to give you, or if they're willing to give you a good deal or not. Who knows?
I think it's like a 3rd round pick, maybe a late 2nd, but at this point in the offseason, I think it should be like a 3rd round pick just to move up one slot, maybe a late 2nd. It's going to get more expensive, obviously, the closer we get, because there'll be a name attached to what we expect the 104 to be.
Nate, when does Treylon Burks become straight up droppable?
Not yet. I think it's 1 more year. I like to give wide receivers 3 years, especially if they're first round picks. And then we'll see what happens. I mean, the situation has not been great in Tennessee. I don't think that has helped Treylon Burks at all. But also, Burks has not been what we were hoping he was going to be. I'm more than willing to admit that. I've moved on from Burks in a couple of different leagues myself. He's not droppable at this point, though. He's still a first-round wide receiver with who we knew was going to be a little raw. And I don't know if the Titans were the best team to develop him. They have not done a great job in developing that entire offense really over the last 2 years. But Burks still has another year for me. If we see just another dud year next year, you're more than fine to go ahead and drop Treylon Burks, I think.
Yeah, I tend to agree. We got Trevor Harris chiming in from Facebook. Follow us on Facebook if you haven't already. Of all places, we are there as well. So get your Facebook likes in on the page as well. Go watch the video there, do what you want. And we're also on Twitter, and the comments work now. So be sure to hop on over to Twitter or X, whatever you prefer to call it.
I still call it Twitter.
It's going to be a hard change to switch that over at some point.
The web address is still Twitter, so I'm still going to call it Twitter.
Fair enough. I think that's fair to say. I think that is Twitter X, we'll call it. But it has Stroud, James Cook, Jamar Chase in a rebuild with 16 2024 draft picks. You are going to need to consolidate, especially if you're looking at 101, 103, 106, and 203 plus 12 other picks. You're going to need to consolidate unless you have just that to work with. There's not a question here, but I just wanted to get a Twitter shout out in there, I guess. But Brian, shout out you, shout out us on Twitter, I guess. And I do need to shout out that our subscriber count is currently at 9,996.
Ooh, almost there.
So
Come on, man.
There's definitely four people watching right now who are not subscribed.
Yeah, we are officially calling you
moms or
now.
your dads or your brothers.
Come on,
somebody.
Log into your other YouTube account and subscribe. I don't know.
I know you have 12 Gmail accounts.
You definitely have multiple.
So get on one of them. Get on one of them. You haven't subscribed yet, so do it. Thank you. That is all. I need to find another.
Mahomes for Bryce Young and a 1-2.
Oh, we just got 2. So 2 people just felt really called out by that. Appreciate the heck out of you for subscribing. Anybody that subscribed during this live stream, appreciate the heck out of all of you. Devon gets it here. Let's go 10K. But Nate, have you looked into Lad McConkey at all? Besides the excellent name, we are 1 subscriber away now, by the way. Who wants to be 10,000? Now things have gotten real.
Now it gets exciting.
Who wants to be 10,000?
I'm on
while we're talking about
we're there.
We just hit 10,000 boys.
Thank
you, everybody.
Thank you.
While we're talking about Lad McConkey here, we'll always remember that the 10K live stream was officially dubbed the McConkey Tonk for those of you country fans out there. So thank you all for 10K, and we're now even up to 1002. Appreciate the heck out of everybody subscribing along. Appreciate all of you. Nate, have you looked into Lad McConkey yet? I have not. He's on my to-do list, but I have not gotten into him at all yet.
I've started looking into Lad McConkey, not having done a full scout on him yet, but just looking at him and what he's done so far with Georgia this year. He's a dynamic wide receiver. He's very athletic. This guy can get down the field. You can use him all over the field. I saw someone on Twitter talking about Lad McConkey dream landing spot Miami Dolphins because he fits that kind of offense really well, because you could motion him all over the field, use that to get him up to speed, because he is a true burner. He can make a difference down the field. He can create yards after the catch. He's a very dynamic wide receiver. He's not going to be one of those wide receivers that just because of what he looks like is going to be stuck in the slot. Okay. This guy can burn down the field. This guy can create yards after the catch. He can be used all over in sweep screens, things like that. Lad McConkey is a great day 2 versatile wide receiver for some team to take a chance on and just put into their team and just use in a couple different ways. Now, with that kind of role, is he going to be a top fantasy wide receiver? I'm not quite sure, because that role usually, with those manufactured touches, that stretching the field, if he's used in that role, it's going to be a little bit more inconsistent. But if he goes to a team where they're going to give him a lot of opportunities to create yards after the catch and to do something to move the chains, he could be a pretty consistent PPR player. So there's going to be a couple different ways he can go, kind of depend on landing spot, but he's versatile. So depending on the landing spot, he has a high ceiling, or he could be kind of put into a role. We'll kind of see what happens.
Fair enough. That is something we'll get into later for sure. Speaking of moving off of some running backs, Zach, you especially being a Dolphins fan, I want to get your thoughts on how do we feel about moving off of Devon Achane and maybe getting some clarity on how his name is actually pronounced over the course of the offseason. Because we still have, people saying it's Achane in the comments. If he told us it's Achane, I don't know anymore. But that's not the question here. How do we feel about moving off of Devon Achane this offseason, Zach? Kicking it to you, the Dolphins fan here.
I feel like I'm in the minority of Dynasty players that I just don't really want Devon Achane. Look, there's no doubt that when he's healthy, he's a pretty good Dynasty player. The problem is I do believe Raheem Mostert's going to be there next year. And I don't think that Devon Achane can do anything in the offseason to overtake Raheem Mostert. Maybe they'll be a little bit better of a split between the two. I'm not sure, but it is the Raheem Mostert show when he's there, when he's healthy. I know Raheem Mostert's 31, but they signed him to a 2-year contract last offseason. So I'm somebody that would rather capitalize off the hype of a Devon Achane. I know I've said this before when we talked about like Puka Nacua, but I feel like I could trust Puka Nacua more because the thing with Devon Achane has always been his size and his ability to hold up in the NFL when he's, kind of a shorter running back, doesn't weigh as much, can't take hits as well. And that's exactly what we've seen this year. So I'm somebody that is trying to move off Devon Achane if I have, and I don't recommend rebuilding around Devon Achane. Listen, I could be wrong. Like we talked about earlier in the video, sometimes you take your L's. I just don't want to be rebuilding around a running back that's, what is he, like 170, 175 pounds, 180 pounds? So it's just not something that I'm uber interested in as Nate looks it up right now. I can hear it.
He's 188 pounds.
Yeah, I'd prefer a 205-pound running back if I'm rebuilding around that. Somebody that can take hits better, and that's exactly what we've seen this year is, he takes a couple hits and he just can't, at least this year, who knows what maybe he gets with Tua Tagovailoa's jiu-jitsu trainer and can take hits better. I don't know,
Bulks
but
up. Yeah,
right. Like it's not something that I'm eager to do is build around Devon Achane. I could be wrong.
I think the thing with Achane has to be the expectation you have for him. And I don't think for me, he's ever going to be somebody I feel great about having as my designated running back 1 or 2 on my team. Ideally my 3, ideally my, one of my top flex plays, because one thing I like doing with my flexes is having somebody who is the, quote unquote glass cannon that can go off for 20 some points, but isn't going to kill me if I'm relying on them for a steady 10 to 15 points this week, whatever the case is. Might fall short of that, but might also boom for me in a week where I really need the points. That's kind of my expectation for Achane. I don't think you're ever going to be able to, expect, even relatively consistent production. I think you're going to kind of have to hope for him to be, I think that's what you get with him, because I don't think he's ever going to be the bell cow of this backfield. I don't think he's going to get the most work out of this backfield. Bell cow isn't what it used to be. It's just, I don't think he's going to be the primary ball carrier in this backfield. I think he, will continue to get decent enough work through the air, but at the end of the day, I'm reserving him for my flex spot. If that's what he is for you, I'm all for it. I don't think you're getting a ton of value moving off of him right now. So I think another guy you're probably fine holding. I don't think his value is going anywhere this offseason. It's just kind of
RB6 right now on keep trade cut. I think his value is pretty high still.
Nuts, really, man. I wouldn't guess that.
And that's why I actually like Devon Achane. I agree though. I think it's really nice if he is like your RB3 because he's got such upside, but also a pretty low floor. And then you add in the fact that he's smaller. So we've already seen some injuries, and that was one of the concerns coming into the league. He basically is exactly who we thought he was. He was a player with a huge upside ceiling, but going to have question marks about his size and the consistency of that weekly production. That's exactly what we see so far. But the thing is, we've seen that upside be so high that he's winning you weeks. And so with that, I'm okay moving off him at the RB6 price tag right now because you can get Travis Etienne. You can go get
Garrett Wilson. Like he's saying he might be able to get Garrett Wilson. If you can do that, I would move him for Garrett. I think he's a great player to move over for a different position, especially wide receiver. Sure.
If you have the depth of running back right now, moving Achane for Garrett Wilson, JSN plus you can probably get right now. T. Higgins plus, Nico Collins plus. You can get a lot of those kind of second, third tier wide receivers plus right now for Achane because people love young running backs. They love the upside. So I think that's definitely something to go explore in your leagues. Hey, what can I get for Devon Achane right now? Because if you can get those kind of wide receivers and anything on top, I think that's a move you want to make.
Oh,
I agree. Anything else to add there, Zach, before I put up this next comment?
Well, let me ask Nate this since he's the anti-Kyron guy. Would you rather have Devon Achane or Kyron?
I would absolutely have Devon Achane rather than Kyron Williams.
See, I'm Kyron there.
What if you can get plus on one side?
Rams have drafted a running back in 10 of the last drafts. 10 of the last 12 drafts.
A lot of them haven't been very good.
Yeah, that's true.
They found their one, Nate. That's why they don't need a draft anymore. Okay.
We'll see.
I would be curious to see how many teams draft running backs consistently in their drafts and don't use them. That would be get
Probably
Brandon on that.
A lot of day
'Cause I
3
bet-
running backs.
Yeah. Get like Lou Nichols, the Lou Nichols of the world. Was Dwayne McBride a late round pick or was he undrafted?
Yep.
Yeah,
Late round pick. So
Ty Chandler.
probably a lot of players. It's probably a bad
That's
stat,
true.
Nate.
That's probably a bad stat. I'm
that's
sorry for
lying
bringing
with
that one to the
statistics.
table. Sorry for bringing that one to the table. My bad.
Can't
I'm just
confirm,
looking
just-
for anything I can to just defame.
I hate
Kyron
Kyron.
Williams. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Bob was right about Kyron. I hate him now.
Nate just really hates day 3 running backs. That's
I
all.
do. That's what it comes down to. I don't hate Kyron Williams. I just don't like day 3 running backs at the and
What if he
Kyron
was a
Williams has
third
been
round
the
pick?
most. If he was a third round pick,
Pretend
I'd
he
probably
was a
love him
third round
so
pick.
much more, Bob. That's just my fault. That is what I have to live with. I have to live with being wrong about Kyron Williams. So
man.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with
That's
that.
too good.
And also, I have to get to Rob's comment because he put it twice now, and it's a pretty
sure.
easy answer. Mahomes or Bryce Young in the 1-2. I'm going to go Mahomes.
Me as well. I
Not even close.
have had my concerns with Young for a long time, dating back to, evaluating him as a prospect. And then this deal just doesn't make me want to move off Mahomes. So I'm taking Mahomes here or buying Mahomes, I guess, at this cost, either which way. I'm pretty happy doing both. Now I got to go find a comment again. Let's talk about assuming Trevion Henderson declares for the draft, where would he fall in the running back rankings? This is a good question, Nate. I think compared to Jonathan Brooks, I'm very curious to see where you'd have him. Been rebuilding successfully and was planning to hit running backs as my last piece, but there's not much to choose from with this 2024 class, and that's because there are also good values in the second round. But where would you have him? I know we touched on that. We both have Brooks running back 1 currently. Even with the injury issues, but that's just kind of speaks to what this running back class is. Ceiling wise, where would Henderson be for you if he does in fact declare?
If Henderson declares, he will likely be my RB1. Film grade wise, I can't tell you for sure if he'll be my RB1 compared to Jonathan Brooks. I really like Jonathan Brooks, but with the injury, when we get down to who are we drafting first, I'm going to be drafting Trevion Henderson first because he's not coming off that major knee injury. As much as I love Brooks, that does add some question marks, some unknown into it. And I think Henderson's a really, really good player who could transition to the NFL as soon as he wants to. So if he does declare, I think he's a guy that can start day 1 for a team. I think he's certainly like a second-round pick. What he brings to the table versatility-wise, he's got power, he's got receiving ability, he can break off some big plays. Henderson's a really, really good running back. And as much as I love Brooks, if Trevion does declare, he is the RB1 in the class.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. I would have him.
And I don't think this class is actually turning out to be that bad.
I agree. I think that once we get into it, there's some sticker shock right now because our top running backs that we had coming into the season didn't pan out as much as we'd hoped. And, Raheem Sanders goes back, a couple others go back. And then, not everybody produces legendary numbers and the class is terrible.
Classic.
It's what always happens when a class, just once every class, the next class is always the best class until it's time to draft that class. That's always how it goes. Let this running back class wash over you a little bit. It might be a little dirty at first, but let it wash over you, get into it. And speaking of getting into it, J. Lau also added on here, also had a roster review last season. We said that we were probably contending in 2025, but our advice got his team in place to compete a whole year early or earlier than was expected. So if you want to get to your roster review, check the YouTube description box for more details. It'll be in the description of this video, should be on Facebook as well. And in all of our videos, there's details on how to get your roster reviewed there. So with that in the books, let's move along to see what we got here. Got a bunch of congrats on 10K. Love to see it. Appreciate all of you guys out there, liking and subscribing. Easiest way to support the channel. Have either of you, I was curious about this because we had some of this in our Discord. Has anyone played in a guillotine league before here between you two? Because I have not, and I've been poking around and interested in it, but no, nothing.
I have not played in a guillotine league.
Sorry, old school. I can't help you with that.
Sorry.
But I tried.
I know there's some pretty fun leagues out there. There's the guillotine leagues. There's the vampire leagues, which look pretty exciting as well. There's a bunch of different ways you can play fantasy football if you want to mix it up.
Yeah. And then moving on to this one, allegedly from me, apparently, but we all love Jaden Reed here. Actually, I don't know if Zach does, but Jaden Reed, let's talk. Kidding? Great season for a rookie. Looks great. Is he a sell with a Green Bay running back room that is so spread out? Are we thinking he's a quote unquote Debo in a few years? Give me the pack brain. I don't know how I feel about that sounding, but it is what it is. I love Jaden Reed. Loved him as a prospect. Nate, you and I both harped on this guy as a prospect, one of our favorite second-round targets. Yep. And last year, some people were able to snag him in the third round, the early third round. There was somebody that said they were able to grab him in the fourth. I don't know what league format you're playing in, but hey, shout out you. Maybe just didn't want to get in on the Packers offense. Who knows? But love what Jaden Reed has been able to accomplish. I'm not selling. Because I don't think his value is good enough to really feel awesome about selling. And maybe that's a little team bias. I don't know, but I just don't think his value is there enough yet to really be excited about it. But old school followed up saying Reed looks like he could be Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think, Nate, you and I both had this comp for him coming out. Stephon Diggs was kind of our ceiling comp for him. And I think that's more in the realm than Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra just a little different receiver than a Reed is. I would love if he ever got to that type of production. I don't know that he does, but I overall love Jaden Reed. I don't have him on enough rosters. I wish I did. There were some leagues I thought I drafted him in, and I went to look for him on my taxi squad, and I didn't have him, and I was pretty bummed out about that. But love Jaden Reed. Any other additional thoughts here? Is there any world where you're interested in selling Jaden Reed right now, or you're pretty much looking to buy right now?
Well, I'm looking to buy right now because he's currently wide receiver 26 on Keep Trade Cut. Right below George Pickens, Debo Samuel is below Rashee Rice, who I think it's kind of a toss-up there between Reed and Rice, but honestly, I like Reed a lot, and I think he has the potential to. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is actually a good ceiling comp at this point because Reed looks like pretty set into the slot with the Packers. They're not moving him outside a lot. In college, he played inside and outside, and that's why I like the Stephon Diggs comp because he can play both. But in the NFL, not that he can't play outside, but the Packers obviously are 3 or 4 deep at outside wide receivers right now. So they're not playing him outside at all. He's playing the slot, but he's been really productive out of the slot. He's got a lot of touchdowns out of the slot, which we talked about when he was coming out, is that Jaden Reed, despite being a smaller wide receiver, constantly wins contested catch situations, constantly wins in the red zone. That is translated into the NFL, which I love to see because there's nothing harder in the NFL than scoring touchdowns. So when you see players that can consistently score touchdowns, especially the wide receiver position, you want something like that. Rashee Rice is the same way. He scored a lot of touchdowns this year. Those two guys are definitely guys I'm buying right now. They're between that top 20, top 25 wide receivers right now in Dynasty. I think they're both top 20 wide receivers. They deserve to go and be acquired because these guys I love the situations they're both in. Jaden Reed, I think he's the wide receiver 1 in the Packers. I know there's a lot of guys there, but I don't think any of those guys are target hogs like Jaden Reed's going to be.
Yep, I agree. Zach, anything else to add here before
I'm super in on Jaden Reed. First of all, Jaden Reed was a guy that I honed in on because you two were very high on him last year. So I have quite a bit of draft shares. And as a matter of fact, Bob, I sent you a trade I made last night for Jaden Reed where I moved off the 104 and I acquired a couple assets. Jaden Reed, a 25 first and 203 were the main return in that pick. So I'm very much in on Jaden Reed. And I got to give you two a lot of credit for that one because it was you two that turned me on to Jaden Reed. And I was like, yes, I want this guy.
Yeah. And for just to be very clear, we were both in on Jaden Reed before he was on the Packers too. So that is definitely a help. So moving along with this is a good question. Zach, you've been saying for a minute to sell Sam Howell. I've been in on the sell Sam Howell wagon. I ended up selling Nate over here, Sam Howell. What did I get back in that deal? I think it was like Kirk Cousins.
You gotta be kidding me.
I think I sent like Cooper along.
I really needed a quarterback. I had rough time going on.
Well, the best part was he got benched for the playoffs, which he ended up playing in, but that was a whirlwind of events. I think Sam Howell, I mean, you're not selling him for anything. I don't think anybody's buying that he's going to be a starter next year, guaranteed by any stretch. I think Nate buzzed out, so I'm going to take him out for a minute. That, or you're just really excited to see me or happy to see me talk about Sam Howell. So I think you're more likely holding Sam Howell. I don't think you're trading him for anything. But especially in Superflex, if it's one quarterback, man, he's probably pretty close to cut bait at this point. But in Superflex, he's worth a hold because we've seen with these quarterbacks, he can start games. He's good enough to be a starter, bridge gap kind of player, but I don't think he's ever going to be a bona fide year to year starter. Yeah. What do you think, Nate? Since you have him, I don't. I got rid of my one share, so sorry. And you fool, yeah. I even had Jacoby Brissett kicking around too, and you didn't take him off my hands in the same motion. Rookie mistake, Nate.
Rookie mistake. I think Sam Howell at this point, I mean, I don't know if you probably can't get a second for him, but if you can, that's what I'd move him for. We have a new coach coming in. It hasn't been officially announced yet, but Ron Rivera is expected to be let go from the Commanders. They're looking to just completely change things over there. Their owners talked about how he wants to model the Commanders organization off the Baltimore Ravens organization. And rumor has it that he's coming after our head of scouting and some of our coordinators to go over there. So we'll see what happens. If there's a new coach over there, a new staff, Sam Howell's not going to be the starter there. They have too good of a draft pick. They have a top 5 pick right now. It's the number 2 pick at the moment. So if they have that, Drake May's their quarterback or someone like that. So Sam Howell, unfortunately, just fell off a cliff at the end of the season, and now they're in a position where it doesn't make any sense to hold on to Sam Howell. They need to go acquire a different quarterback if they have the opportunity, and they can go from there. So you got to move them if you can. Second round pick, late second, I'd be more than happy, obviously.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the going rate for a backup starter that gets elevated. So I think that's fair value, fair cost. If you can get that, great. If not, I don't think it's the worst thing to hold them in Superflex. Zach, any other thoughts besides I told you so down there in the bottom?
Oh, man. Like, the problem with Sam Howell was always the fact that Sam Howell was really good for your fantasy team, but his wide receivers weren't, which was a giant red flag. And so I started to look into it more. And I'm like, this offensive line is not anywhere near as bad as people are saying. Like, the people who study, my dog's going nuts. The people who study.
She hates Sam Howell too.
Yeah, she does. She does. The people who study like offensive lines and stuff like that were telling you it's not the offensive line. And so you start to put things together. But I started saying this the moment Josh Harris came into the picture. This is so obviously a dead year for the Commanders that I did not think they'd finish with the number 2 pick where they are now. But I definitely saw them having a top 10 pick. They weren't a good football team. They're not very relevant. Then they started trading off guys at the trade deadline. I'm like, this defense is going to be so bad that Sam Howell's not going to have to throw 40 times for them to try to win games. And lo and behold, that happened. They couldn't stop anybody. And I almost think, right, we saw two weeks in a row where Jacoby Brissett came in, and all of a sudden Terry McLaurin is a thing, right? I almost think that the Commanders were like, and I'm a very, very, very much the guy that tells you teams do not tank. This is a made-up storyline that we tell ourselves. I've been in NFL locker rooms. I've covered a Super Bowl. I've been in college locker rooms. They do not tank on purpose. But the Commanders were like, hey, we're going to start Jacoby Brissett. And then somebody was like, no, we're not. His hamstring hurts. We are not starting Jacoby Brissett this week because they're at the point where one win puts them at the number 4, 5, 6 pick. And lo and behold, they've been losing. And they're at number 2 right now with the worst strength of schedule of those 3 teams with 4 wins.
I do also want to point out there are some rumors about the Commanders maybe trading up 1 pick to go get Caleb Williams, who is from DC.
Well, there you go. It's set in
and
stone.
They have the extra capital from the defensive players they traded at the trade deadline. So we'll see.
True or false? Sam Howell is Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I mean, false. He's factually not Ryan Fitzpatrick. So
needs a beard first.
Try harder, Zach. No, I think that's probably your best case scenario for Sam Howell at this point. I think finding a guy that can be a journeyman in the league, can be a solid backup when called upon, and you think with more time being able to develop, he'd get to that point. So definitely want to get to this question here. How can I get you to review my roster? If you'd like your roster review before or during the offseason, I guess I need to update these tickers apparently. But if you'd like your roster review, to check the YouTube description box below. Payhip.com/Dynasty Rewind is where to go. One more time, payhip.com/Dynasty Rewind is the place to go. With that said, moving on to more comments. I saw a good one here that I really wanted to get into. And I don't remember if this is it, but it is for now. Is Jerry Jeudy a lost cause in Dynasty? And I think there's something to be said here because we've just not gotten what we wanted from Jerry Jeudy for a long time now. He's had different quarterbacks, which isn't necessarily good for him. He's had different fluctuating situations. It's been about as bad as it can be for Jeudy, and he's still been, I don't know, had glimmers of hope here and there. I wouldn't call him a lost cause. I think that's probably too far, but definitely somebody I don't want really anything to do with unless he's being given away at this point. I think I've gotten rid of all of my shares at this point, but just guy, I'm very concerned with long term. Nate, I know you're a Jerry Jeudy guy, or have been since he was a prospect. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts here.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a Jerry Jeudy fan since coming out of college. He was just such a pro-ready wide receiver coming out through the scout, and it hasn't been there. And the Broncos offense obviously hasn't really been there either. He did get outperformed by Cortland Sutton this year. You look at the efficiency stats of Jerry Jeudy, and it's not bad, but it's not great. Sure. Honestly, it's been very average for Jerry Jeudy, and he's just been on an offense that has not been great. Like his efficiency stats and things like that have been just kind of middling. But the Broncos offense barely throws the ball. They're not efficient when they do. And because of that, his stats have been terrible, honestly. I think what Jerry Jeudy needs is a second chance in a different location, a different team. Trade rumors have been going around with him and Sutton for the past 2 years. I think something probably happens this offseason as they get ready. He's on his rookie contract, so he's got that 5th year eligibility. They're going to be probably looking somewhere else to move him as they kind of clean shop there. At this point, Jerry Jeudy is ranked in the same place as Quentin Johnston, Marvin Mims, Michael Wilson, who I know Zach likes down there. But I think if you can get like Jerry Jeudy for a 3rd-round pick or as a throw-in player in a trade, I think he's still worth a dart throw because he's better than he's still done something over the past 4 years. He hasn't been a complete bust. And sometimes players just need a different situation to take off a little bit. I don't think he's got quite the ceiling that we hope for at this point. But I don't see why you can't go out and get Jerry Jeudy, acquire him for cheap right now. And then if he's in a different situation, why he can't put up, wide receiver 3 numbers at least and be in your lineup. I think he's still a good wide receiver. I think he's still an NFL wide receiver. He's going to be around for a while. He's not a bust.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it's just hard to find somebody. You're kind of in that chokehold of like the comment here, can't trade him, can't play him, can't drop him. And it's hard to find somebody who's willing to sell at a decent cost because they probably paid upwards of a first to get him or something decent, or they drafted him highly in their startup, whatever the case is, probably more than they just are comfortable moving on from. It's just tough situation to move on from. Zach, did you have anything else to add on to here?
I think Nate encapsulated that pretty well. I pretty much feel the exact same way. Might need to change the scenario. There's a difference between Jerry Jeudy, the fantasy player, and Jerry Jeudy, the NFL player. And a lot of times it's not that Jerry Jeudy is bad. It's just it's not a good fit. Mm-hmm. And we've seen that a lot of times. And I'm not saying that that's what it is. It's just that's very much a possibility. We've seen Sean Payton have his tendencies to his guys more so. And that may be what's happening right now. Little Jordan Humphreys is a thing. Who's the other wide receiver? Brandon Johnson or something like that. Johnson. I don't know how much of it is Jerry Jeudy's a bust versus this is just not a good fit. And I'm just going to lean that this is not a good fit. And let's see what happens to him. What happens to him in the offseason.
Yeah, I agree with all that, Zach. And I'm going to come right back to you with this one. Currently in talks of moving Tank Dell for CeeDee Lamb. I love going and getting CeeDee Lamb right now. I don't know what the price is going to be. It's very much, though. And I'm talks of the pick value. I'll be adding what is an appropriate amount on top of Tank Dell to make this trade work. Zach, what are your thoughts here? Running it back to you.
Wow.
What do you need to add on top of Tank Dell to get CeeDee Lamb right now? I think it hurts that Tank Dell is hurt, And, that probably hurts his value because it just, even though he's a young player, it's not like I don't think anybody thinks it's like a debilitating injury. He's not going to, have to retire or anything like that, but it definitely hurts his value. What are your thoughts here? What do you need to add on top of Tank Dell to get CD? Or is it worth it?
I think now that we're in the offseason, the injury is irrelevant.
I tend to agree, but I still think that there's always that long-term damage or that long-term like, oh, he's not going to be the same thing he was, which possible, but also, I mean, he's a younger player. He's still, I think, 24 years old.
24.
It's a broken bone. It's a broken bone. Like, it's not a ligament. It's a broken bone. Yeah, they heal much faster than ligaments do. That's for sure. So I'm not uber worried about this injury. My question for you guys is CeeDee Lamb the wide receiver one in fantasy right now?
I don't know if I'd go that far. I think I'd put him in the same tier as Chase. I put him with Chase and JJ at this point. I think that over the course of this season, more than proved that is a thing and should be a thing.
Well, then in terms of acquiring CeeDee Lamb for Tank, I mean, let me bounce this off you guys. Like Tank Dell and a mid first, is that what it would take?
That's the first thing that popped up into my head.
I don't think a late first would get it done.
I think this goes back to the same issue we talked about at the beginning of the live with Justin Jefferson, where it's just Lamb. Everyone has put Lamb into that tier one now. Look, so he's just really hard to go acquire because those top stud wide receivers, it's not that they're not necessarily worth it. It's just that there's so many other wide receivers that I can go acquire that can give me somewhat similar production, and I probably have another player with similar production on top of that. Like we talked earlier with Justin Jefferson and what was the player we were trying to trade up from?
Nico.
And we talked about Neighbors or Odunze with Nico or Justin Jefferson. Unless you're in a start 10-team league, it probably makes more sense to have the two wide receivers that can give you 15 fantasy points per week rather than Justin Jefferson giving you 20. So I think that's what it comes down to. CeeDee Lamb giving you 20 points. I mean, obviously this guy is one of the best. He can go out there and win you the week. He's got multiple games of 30, 40 points. But Tank Dell, if I can get a mid first and Tank Dell for CeeDee Lamb, but you're not going to make that happen. You're going to need to probably add 2 firsts on top of Tank Dell because I think Bob's right. The injury still is fresh in people's mind. I think 3 or 4 months from now, that injury won't matter at all. But I think right now the injury still does matter in people's minds. So I think if you want to make this happen, CeeDee Lamb's at an all-time high value right now. Tank Dell's at a low value right now. Now is not the time to make this trade. 3 or 4 months from now, I think you can make this trade a little bit easier. But right now, it's just not going to work out value-wise to be worth it.
Yeah. I remember when you could trade Drake London and a late first-round pick for CeeDee Lamb. I remember. Pepperidge Farm does too.
We talked about it. And I think we got crapped on.
Yeah. Well, and hey, I'll hide this comment real quick. Since we haven't gotten into Drake London and people have not dropped any Drake London questions, I think there's a window right now where Drake London can be somewhat of a value because I think he had a down enough year, wasn't, everybody still wanted to put him as a top 10 wide receiver or a wide receiver 1 finish, didn't get there, put enough on that was solid, but this offense is still in limbo, and there's hope out there that Arthur Smith might finally be getting the boot, and a new offensive regime is hopefully going to come in. Hopefully they, make the move to draft a frickin' quarterback because they need to. And I think if you can get those 2 things done, I think we very quickly change our tune with how we feel about Drake London and Kyle Pitts especially, or Drake London especially. We like Kyle Pitts still because tight end landscape, he's still pretty viable, but I think there is a small window coming here where Drake London isn't the worst value on the board like he was for a long time. I still remember people saying that, 2 firsts last year were buying Drake London low. And the constant concern has, there's some talent concerns that have popped up, but for the most part for us, it's always been situational. And the situation's finally about to change. He's talented enough to do well. He's shown well in this bad offense, or shown well enough at times in this bad offense that I think there's something to be said that, when we were talking about, buy low, quote unquote, bets for this coming year, I think Drake London for now is, but the second there's a firing, the second there's a quarterback drafted, you're going to be paying very high prices.
What can I add on to George Pickens, Amari Cooper, Christian Watson right now to go get Drake London?
I don't think it's too much.
If I can add a second to any of one of those guys to go get Drake London, I think that's a good trade. Look at that. I'm telling you to buy Drake London.
Look at that. We've come so far.
We don't hate players. We hate values.
We hate values at the end of the day. That is the number one concern. But let's talk a rookie here. How do we feel about Ja'Tavion Sanders? I love him. I think he's a great tight end. I think one of the tight end 2 for sure. I haven't gotten, in all fairness and all transparency, haven't gotten into the rest of the tight end room or tight end class at all yet. But just the way he's quote unquote all around player, but can play in the slot, in line, can catch a ball and take it downfield. Yards after catch per reception is incredible. All of these things, super athletic. I mean, unless
a lot of boxes checked.
Yeah, exactly. So he's going to be overshadowed in this class, but we talk about taking him early second, mid to early second, I think is where you're going to have to take him in most leagues. Tight end premium probably a little earlier, but a guy, like you said, a lot of boxes checked. Speaking of checking boxes, I just want to let everybody know, I think we're going to be shutting this down pretty soon here. So get your likes in, get your super chats in if you have them. Head on over to patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind if you want to get in the Discord, where we answer questions like this all day long, all the time. So just with that said, Nate, I want to kick it to you. Your thoughts on Ja'Tavion Sanders. Zach, if you've looked into him, feel free to dive in as well. Your thoughts on that? What do you got, Nate?
Yeah, like you said, I don't have too much to add on because he is really all around tight end. I think there's a chance that he is drafted in the first round, especially with how we saw tight ends go this last year. Teams are drafting tight ends now. They're trying to have that Travis Kelce for whoever their quarterback is. They know that the tight end mismatch right now is something they can take advantage of. Ja'Tavion Sanders gives them that ability to take advantage of a matchup. You put Ja'Tavion Sanders against a linebacker, he's too fast. You put him against a safety, he's too strong. He can sit in the slot, play out of there. He can go in line, block, and then release. He's a guy that can play on every down. I like Ja'Tavion Sanders a lot. Like you said, the yards after the catchability as well is really impressive. I think it's going to be a first-round pick, if not an early second-round pick. And then same thing in your rookie drafts. If it's tight end premium, I think he's going to be kicking around in the late first, early second. And if you get him anywhere past that, I think you're getting a really good value because Ja'Tavion Sanders, like you said, it's going to be overshadowed by Brock Bowers in this class because Brock Bowers is amazing. But Ja'Tavion Sanders, in his own right, could definitely compete for tight end 1 in most other classes.
Yeah. Zach, anything to add here?
Yeah, I haven't seen too much, but what I will say is that as a Miami Dolphins fan, he's somebody I hope that my team targets because we desperately need a tight end.
That would be great. He could totally be George Kittle for the Dolphins.
Desperately.
You mean Durham Smythe ain't doing it for you, Zach?
Man.
Speaking of Ja'Tavion Sanders again, what is Brock Bowers' rookie draft value compared to Ja'Tavion Sanders in a 12-team start 9, 1 quarterback, 0.5 tight end premium? I think this is one where Brock Bowers is probably a top 3-4 pick off the board at least.
3, 4, 5.
I think Sanders in a 0.5 tight end premium probably close to the fringe first round pick for me. So probably quite a few picks apart. Anything to add there?
Yeah, they're probably like 6 or 7 picks apart, I would say, in a league like that, especially because you're probably only going to have like 1 or 2 quarterbacks in between, if that. So, yeah, I think, Brock Bowers is definitely a top 5 pick in a league like that. And then Ja'Tavion Sanders probably, a late first round pick.
Fair enough. All right. And then Devon chiming in again. Who are you moving the 101 for? Seeing a lot of questions in the Patreon Discord, which unfortunately we've been neglecting a little bit while we've been here. But Devon, I always say Devon because of Achane, but not to cast blame. But who are you moving for the 101? Seeing a lot of questions in the Patreon Discord community group chat. And I feel like players are selling the 101 too early or don't understand its full value come the rookie draft. I definitely agree. I think if you're moving the 101 now, you need an absolute haul because you need to make up for the value you're losing just by waiting between now and then. I think we lost Nate. Speaking of losing things, now he's back. It's the second I take him out of here, he comes back. It's funny how that works. But I definitely think you need to sell him for a haul. What are some things you might be looking to move the 101 for right now that you feel comfortable with? Nate, I'll kick it to you first. What do you got? What are you thinking with moving the 101 this early?
Yeah, with moving the 101, I always like, if I'm going to move off the 101, the 102, something like that, that's a really valuable draft pick. I almost always want to move down because I want to keep a top pick. I don't like to just give up a top first round pick because those are really, really valuable. And you get like the cornerstone players of your team in that spot. So if I can drop down and still keep like a top 5 pick, a top 4 pick, and I can get 2 other firsts on top of that, I don't mind one of those first being a 25 first. If I can get like a 105, 110, and then what I expect to be like a early-ish 2025. I think that's kind of like the lower end value for the 101 right now, because I think the 101, whoever that name is, whether it's Marvin Harrison Jr. in your league or Caleb Williams, probably going to end up being a top 10, top 15 dynasty asset by the time they actually step on the field.
Yeah.
And because of that, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to move the 101 right now unless you're getting an absolute haul. I mean, like if you're getting 3 first-round picks this year, I think that's something you can, that's where you really want to kind of start that conversation, because whoever you're going to get it's just going to get more valuable the closer we get to the draft. Whatever your 101 is valued at right now, it's going to be worth more 3 months from now, right before your draft. Because like I said before, once that name gets attached, once a consensus name gets attached to a draft slot, it goes up.
Yeah, I agree. Zach, your thoughts here?
I'm kind of going to echo what Nate said here. The word I'll use is volume. If I'm going to move back from 101, I want a good amount of volume. And I don't want to trade out of that first tier either. So I want to stay within 105, 106, depending on what your need is. If you need a wide receiver or a quarterback, you kind of want to stay within the top 5. You don't want to be with it's okay, but you don't want to be left with Brock Bowers, at 106 or 107.
You still want some kind of choice. You don't want to just be left with whatever the last player is in the tier.
That's the perfect way to say it, is you want some choice, but I want volume. And I'm a big fan of just accumulating 2s and 3s. And look, again, I traded back from 104 yesterday. I picked up Jaden Reed. So I want that kind of a player who I think will be worthy of trading back from 104 as well. So I don't just want to have volume for the sake of having volume. I want players and I want picks in volume.
Yeah. Players and picks is always a great way to move. You get proven commodities, or at least, somewhat proven, or at least have stepped foot on the field and not lost value yet. Or maybe they have if you're buying low. But I think, getting further into this discussion, we'll get into further days from now. We'll definitely have a video this offseason, what we trade every single first-round rookie pick for. One of our big hits from last year, we'll be bringing that back for sure. But I think, boys, we're going to head on out of here. We're going to call this one a day, and I'm going to hide this current comment so we could say goodbye with our full faces here. But appreciate everybody for tuning in, hitting 10K on the live. Pretty cool moment.
Awesome.
I'm going to open up you guys to say goodbye yourselves. Nate, if anything you want to add. Zach, is there anything you want to add to what we're going through this, or what we're going to be working on this offseason? What we're covering, saying thank you, whatever you want. Nate, go ahead and kick off the goodbyes.
Yeah, I just really want to say thank you. This has been quite the process, building up this YouTube channel, building up this podcast over the past couple of years, and we couldn't have done it without all of your support. Really appreciate you guys helping us get to 10K. Appreciate you guys tuning in daily. We're putting a lot of content. We put a lot of work into this. We want to be really good for you guys. We want to give you the best content that we can, and we're always trying to improve. So thank you for sticking with us so far, and it's only going to get better from here on out. We had a great time last offseason, but we also learned a lot last offseason about what kind of content we can create, how we can do it better. And we are ready to go for this offseason. We're really excited about what we got for you guys. Another draft guide coming. Don't worry about that. So we're really excited about this offseason. Please stick around, continue to help share, continue to help grow. And just really, really thank you guys, because this has been awesome.
Zach, to you.
How am I supposed to follow that up, man?
I don't know. I'm going to have to follow both of you up.
That was great. I think Nate said it well. And just to speak to you, Nate and Bob, I mean, the reason I joined is because of you guys, the work efforts that you and Mike and Pork and Chev and Sean and all you guys put into the channel, and made me want to join way back. I think when I joined, we were at 3K, and it's crazy now that we're at 5. I think it's been almost 2 years now. So we've done a lot of great stuff, and really appreciate the people that make the channel what it is. And that's not just, the patrons. It's not just you guys. It's just the community as a whole. I mean, I'll be honest with you, man. I found the community of Dynasty Fantasy Football at a weird time in my life. And I when I met my girlfriend, I'm like, I don't go to strip clubs. I don't go gambling. I play Dynasty Fantasy Football. That's it, So if you see me smiling at my phone, if you see me smiling at my phone, it's not another chick. It's something somebody said in the Patreon. So because we got such a great Patreon,
great community.
So yeah, just absolutely love this community. It's why I'm really annoying in your inboxes, Nate and Bob. So it all comes from love. Real quick, Alvin Kamara is inactive today. Kendra Miller's active, baby. Let's go.
We'll see.
Oh boy, this is why
Yeah, sneak
week
peek.
18 matters. Get to see Kendra Miller rocking it out in week 18. But speaking of rocking it out in week 18, I hope you all enjoy your games. I hope if your team is trying to get into the playoffs, I hope they do and or they don't, because maybe you want a better pick. But thank you all for joining us on this live stream. This is awesome. And coming along in this journey with us, getting to 10K is awesome. You know, like Nate said, could not do it without all of you watching along, watching every day, liking the videos, commenting on the videos. Maybe you share them with a friend. Maybe you don't. Maybe you want to keep us to yourselves. I don't know what the deal is, but definitely if you want more of us, make sure you subscribe. Don't miss the things we got cooking this offseason. Like I said, some great videos coming out, what we trade each first round pick for, rookie mock drafts. And if you want to mock draft with us, the best way to do it, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Always drop the draft link in the Discord before we mock, so you can mock along with us, do a ton of mocks. There's a ton of guys in there always mocking, but sometimes we even record them as well and get them on the channel, and you get to be a part of that, and that's always fun. This community is huge. It's growing, and we'd love you to be a part of it. So if you're not already, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. If you just want to keep on rooting us along on YouTube, that is absolutely fine. There's YouTube memberships available where you get all the same podcasts. You get the Discord membership as well, and you get early access to some videos as well. As soon as they're done editing and uploaded and ready, you get access as early as a couple days before, so you can hop on the YouTube membership as well. And that's same pricing as our $5 tier for Patreon. So with all that said, there's plenty of ways to support. If you want to go deeper with us, always in the YouTube description box, there are a ton of promo codes for apps, for SeatGeek, for Underdog, for sleeper picks, so on and so forth. Tons of ways to show your support. But as always, the easiest is liking the video, commenting on the video, and watching along. Thank you all so much for watching. That is going to be it for us in this one. We'll see you guys in the next one. But until then, I hope that y'all have a good one.